Okay, so we were to start from economy. In the second part, we will finish the November magazine. So let's just start November, right? So let's begin again.
3. Economy. 3.1 Export Promotion Mission. Why in the news? The Union Cabinet approved the Export Promotion Mission, EPM. More on the news. This mission was announced in the Union Budget 2025-26. Also, the Cabinet approved the introduction of the Credit Guarantee Scheme for Exporters, CGSE. About Export Promotion Mission, EPM. Vision. Provides a comprehensive, flexible, and digitally driven framework for export promotion. Financial outlay rupees 25,060 crores. Timeline 6 years, FY 2025 to 26 to FY 2030 to 31. Targeted sectors. Priority support will be extended to sectors impacted by recent global tariff escalations, such as textiles, leather, gems and jewelry, engineering goods, and marine products. Mission architecture. It will operate through two distinct but integrated subschemes, Niryat Protsahan, financial support, designed to improve access to affordable trade finance for diversification into new markets. Niryat Disha, non-financial support, designed to enhance the market readiness and competitiveness of exporters. Ways under it includes export quality and compliance support, assistance for international branding, export, warehousing and logistics, etc. Implementing agency, Directorate General of Foreign Trade. Need of Export Promotion Mission, EPM. Consolidation of existing schemes. It integrates and interest modernizes key existing schemes, for example, Equalization Scheme and Market Access Initiative. Logistics challenges, inadequate infrastructure and transit delays, sharp rise in freight costs and shipping disruptions, for example, disturbances in the Red Sea route, etc. Market access. Challenges. Limited visibility and buyer connections, identifying new markets, etc. Regulatory challenges. Regular documents such as a certificate of origin, quality inspection certificate, and packing list, among others. International constraints of competition. For example, Indian products are less competitive in comparison with Chinese products due to high. This includes production costs, low innovation, etc. Trade barriers and tariffs, increasing global protectionist tendencies. For example, recently, the US imposed a steep 50% tariff on Indian goods, significantly reducing India's exports to the US, which is India's largest export destination. Other constraints, issue of quality standards, supply chain disruption, etc. Other key government initiatives to strengthen India's export landscape. Foreign trade and export promotion. New Foreign Trade Policy, FTP. 2023 focuses on export incentives, ease of doing business, and emerging sectors like e-commerce and high-tech products. Rebate of state and central levies and taxes, ROSCTL, scheme. Provide tax and duty reimbursements to exporters, benefiting sectors like pharmaceuticals, chemicals, and steel. Ease of doing business and digital initiatives, compliance and decriminalization reforms. Over 42,000 compliances reduced and 3,800 provisions decriminalized to simplify business processes. Other. National Single Window System, NSWS, to streamline approvals, Trade Connect e-platform, etc. Infrastructure and logistics, for example, National Logistics Policy, NLP, and PM Gati Shakti. E-commerce and digital trade, for example, e-commerce export hub, ECEH, iSkate, digital platform, modernizes customs processes with e-filing, real-time tracking, and seamless documentation. Agriculture and organic exports, for example, National Program for Organic Production, NPOP.
NPOP, right.
What more can be done to promote exports? Finalizing free trade agreements, FTA. Several upcoming free trade agreements can also be negotiated better to improve market access. For example, Europe, Central Asia, etc., and favorable trading terms. Harness demand for high-value technical services. For instance, specialized technical expertise in the fields of R&D, manufacturing services, supply chain management and maintenance and repair. Strengthening MSME exports through increased MSME participation in trade shows and exhibitions. MSMEs should also be trained on important aspects of export procedures, documentation, and standards. Strengthen innovation and value addition. For example, agricultural and processed food products. Export Development Authority, APEDA, launched Bharati, Bharat's hub for agritech, resilience, advancement, and incubation for export enablement, to promote innovation and create new export opportunities for young entrepreneurs. Unlock e-commerce exports. For example, create separate customs supervision codes for e-commerce exports. Create National Trade Network, NTN. Proposed unified digital platform to centralize all export-import processes, customs, DGFT, banks, ports, into one system. O. Implementing NTN would prove beneficial in minimizing transaction costs and addressing the informational asymmetry. Credit Guarantee Scheme for Exporters, CGSE. Objective: to enhance liquidity, support market diversification, boost employment, and improve global competitiveness. Total credit support: up to additional 20,000 crore rupees, collateral-free with 100% guarantee coverage by National Credit Guarantee Trustee Company Limited, NCGTC. Beneficiaries: both MSME and non-MSME exporters. Oversight body: a management committee formed under the chairmanship of Secretary, DFS. Implementing agency, Department of Financial Services, DFS, through NCGTC. Conclusion: EPM provides a unified and digitally driven framework to overcome fragmented export schemes and strengthen India's global competitiveness. By addressing key challenges like logistics gaps, quality standards, and market access, it aims to drive sustained and diversified export growth.
Export growth के लिए, right?
3.2. Manufacturing in India. Why in the news? Recently, Niti Aayog's Frontier Technology Hub, in collaboration with the Confederation of Indian Industry, CIM1, and Deloitte, unveiled a 10-year roadmap titled Reimagining Manufacturing, India's Roadmap to Global Leadership in Advanced Manufacturing. Key highlights of the roadmap: core frontier technology enablers, artificial intelligence and machine learning, advanced materials, digital twins, virtual data-driven replicas of physical systems, and robotics. Key features of the roadmap: a sector-focused approach. It identifies 13 priority manufacturing sectors where frontier technologies can generate the greatest impact, ranging from electronics, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals to green energy. Frontier technology integration. Artificial intelligence and machine learning for predictive maintenance, quality control, and process. Optimization. Digital twins to simulate real-time factory environments. Advanced materials to enhance product performance and sustainability. Robotics and automation to improve precision, productivity, and safety. Significance of manufacturing. Balancing economic structure. Manufacturing shifts labor from low productivity agriculture to higher productivity non-farm employment, which the service sector could not achieve desirable scale. Employment: the sector has the highest backward and forward linkages compared to any other sector. That is, it generates more jobs indirectly for every direct job created. Strategic autonomy: a strong manufacturing base enhances self-reliance in critical sectors such as defense, semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and energy equipment. COVID-19 exposed dependence on imports for APIs, medical equipment, and semiconductors. Innovation spillovers: manufacturing fosters spillovers, development skilling, ecosystem-wide productivity gains. Regional balance: manufacturing can decentralize growth by creating jobs in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities and rural hinterlands, reducing distress migration to metros. For example, Micro and Small Enterprises Cluster Development Program, a central sector scheme focusing on rural. R&D supplier. And areas the Northeast Aspirational District for Balanced Regional Development. Challenges faced by manufacturing in India. Funding gaps by the government and industry for frontier technologies to support pilot-to-scale transitions. Inadequate adoption of these technologies could result in a reduction of India's share of global manufacturing to 2.5% by 2035. Niti Aayog. Low investment in R&D. For example, R&D spending in India accounted for only 0.64% of GDP in 2023, far below China, which spent around
0.64 है बस R&D
2.5%.
इंडिया में.
Disincentives to scale. Stringent regulations incentivize MSMEs to remain small to avoid regulations and taxes, reducing employability and scalability. Approximately 35.5% of manufacturing output is accounted by MSMEs. Manufacturing versus services imbalance. India experienced services-led growth, bypassing manufacturing-led structural transformation seen in East Asia. For example, services account for approximately 55% of GDP. This has resulted in unemployment as services, especially IT and finance, are high productivity but low employment sectors. Low labor productivity. According to the ILO, GDP per working hour in India was $8, placing it at the 133rd position. Unequal distribution. The top 5 states account for nearly 54% of manufacturing GVA. Initiatives by government for boosting manufacturing. Make in India Initiative, 2014. It targets the share of the manufacturing sector to 25% of GDP by 2025, create 100 million jobs, increase growth rate of Indian industry to 1,214% per year, etc. Production-linked incentive scheme, 2020.
Recent scheme
For 14 key sectors to strengthen incentives to eligible companies based on manufacturing sector by offering incremental sales. National Logistics Policy,
incremental sales
2022.
जितना difference रहेगा sales में
To
उस
reduce
पे
the
extra
logistics
payment
cost to
होगा.
an average of 8% of GDP by 2030. India's logistics cost has recently dropped to 7.97% of GDP. Modified program for semiconductors and display manufacturing ecosystem under MATEY. To attract investments in the field of semiconductors and display manufacturing by providing 50% of project cost as incentive. PM Gati Shakti. To achieve Atmanirbhar Bharat and a $5 trillion economy by 2025 through multimodal and last-mile connectivity infrastructure. National Industrial Corridor. Program. To develop competitive greenfield industrial regions and nodes across all approved industrial corridors with 32 projects. Conclusion. To unlock the full potential of the manufacturing sector, India may pursue coordinated reforms in regulations, land, tariffs, infrastructure, and logistics to reduce costs and improve ease of doing business. Simultaneously, greater investment in R&D, adoption of frontier technologies, and industry-aligned skill development are essential. 3.3 World Inequality Report 2026. Why in News? Recently, World Inequality Lab released World Inequality Report 2026. Key highlights of the report? Global. Global wealth share. Global. Top 10% of population owns approximately 75% of total wealth, and bottom, 50% holds a mere 2%.
Wow.
Income. Divide.
So huge.
Global top 10% of income earners earns more than remaining 90% combined, and the poorest half of the global population receives less than 10% of total global earnings. Climate inequality, the carbon divide. Stark disparity. Poorest half of global population accounts for a mere 3% of private capital-related carbon emissions, while the wealthiest 10% are responsible for approximately 77% of these emissions. Unequal distribution of risk. A clear climate injustice exists, where those who emit the least, often in low-income countries, are the most vulnerable and exposed to climate shocks. Measurement of inequality. Gini Index. Gini Index, ranging from 0 to 100, measures the extent to which the distribution of income, or in some cases, consumption expenditure, among individuals or households within an economy, deviates from a perfectly equal distribution. It is commonly defined through Lorenz curve. Gini Index of 0 represents perfect equality, while systemic global financial inequality, or the exorbitant privilege. The global financial system reinforces inequality by allowing rich economies to borrow cheaply and receive higher returns on foreign investments. Wealth transfer. This system results in a net income transfer of approximately 1% of global GDP flowing annually from poorer to richer nations, an amount nearly 3 times the total global development aid. Index of 100 implies perfect inequality. Kuznets ratio. It measures the share of income going to the top quantiles divided by the income going to the bottom quantiles. The greater the ratio, the higher inequality. One example of a Kuznets ratio is Palmer ratio. Palmer ratio is the share of income going to the top 10% divided by the income share of the bottom 40%. India. High income. Inequality. Top 10% of earners capture 58% of the national income, and bottom 50% receives only 15% of the national income. Extreme wealth. Inequality. Richest 10% hold approximately 65% of the total national wealth, and top 1% alone holds approximately 40% of the total national wealth. Consequences of high inequality. Economic inefficiency and stagnation. Inequality reduces overall economic performance as inadequate healthcare, nutrition and education among large population limits. Productivity and
यार
leads to
एक
the
चीज़ यहाँ
wastage
पे
of
मैं पॉज
talent.
करना
For
चाहता हूँ
example,
और बताना चाहता हूँ आपको कि यहाँ पे जो टॉप 10% है इंडिया का वो अर्न करता है 58%। आप इसको कहीं पे लिख सकते हो, और इस मैगजीन को सही तरीके से पढ़ने का तरीका है कि यार आप इसको साथ में सुनो और अपनी मैगजीन ओपन रखो और साथ में पढ़ते जाओ, ठीक है। सो 58% नेशनल इनकम जो है वो टॉप 10% की है, और जो बॉटम का वो है 50%, उनको सिर्फ 15% मिलता है ओवरऑल उनकी वेल्थ, नेशनल वेल्थ में से। सो इट इज़ अ स्टार्क इनइक्वालिटी। ऊपर की सिर्फ 10% की बात कर रहे हैं और नीचे के 50% की बात कर रहे हैं, ठीक है।
anemia impacts workforce participation, reducing household incomes and impeding economic growth. NFHS5. Intergenerational poverty traps. Unequal outcomes reinforce unequal opportunities, with parental income and education strongly predicting children's life prospects, thereby reducing social mobility. Undermined climate action. Excessive consumption and carbon emissions by the very rich drive climate change, which harms the global economy and disproportionately affects the poor. For example, per capita carbon emissions are low in developing countries. Increased vulnerability and debt. Low-income and informal sector households face high risks from economic shocks and carry increased debts, threatening broader economic stability. For example, impact of COVID-19 lockdown on migrant workers and street vendors. Erosion of trust and democracy. Economic inequalities translate into political inequalities, creating a cycle wherein rules are shaped to favor the rich, deepening economic divides and social polarization. For example, oil wealth concentration in the hands of elites in Nigeria. Conclusion. According to the World Bank, India ranks 4th globally in income equality with a Gini index of 25.5. India's extreme poverty also fell to 2.3% in 2022 to 23, with 171 million people moving out of extreme poverty between 2011 to 23. It has been supported by schemes such as PM Jan Dhan Yojana, Direct Benefit Transfer, Ayushman Bharat, and Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, PMGKAY. This reflects progress in the right direction, though stronger measures in employment generation, education, skilling, and social protection are needed to sustain and deepen equity gains. 3.4. Implementation of labor codes.
4 labor codes आए थे।
Why in the news? Recently, Ministry of Labour and Employment brought into force the 4 labor codes almost 5 years after being cleared in Parliament. More on the news. These codes are the Code on Wages, Industrial Relations Code, Code on Social Security, and Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code. These codes consolidate 29 existing central labour laws. India's labour law framework. Constitutional provisions. Concurrent jurisdiction. Labour is in the concurrent list under the 7th schedule, allowing both the centre and the state to legislate. Preamble. Emphasize social justice, dignity of the individual, equality of status, which become guiding principles for labour welfare and labour legislations. Directive principles. Article 39. The state shall secure equal pay for equal work,
right?
irrespective of gender. Article 41. Provide for the right to work, education and public assistance in case of unemployment, old age, sickness and disablement. Article 42. Secure fair and humane conditions of work and maternity relief. Article 43. The state to secure for all workers a living wage, conditions of work, ensuring the decent standard of life. Article 43. A. Rights of workers to participate in the management of industries. O. Fundamental rights. Article 16. Equality of opportunity in matters of public employment. Article 19. C. Protects the rights to form associations or unions. Article 23. Prohibits human trafficking and forced labor. Article 24. Prohibits the employment of children below 14 in hazardous industries. Labor force, overall labor force participation rate, LFPR, for 2024 was 59.6%, with 90% of workers engaged in the unorganized sector. O. Institutional mechanism. O. Ministry of Labor and Employment to protect and safeguard the interests of workers. O. Labor Bureau publishes information on industrial disputes, closures, retrenchments, layoffs, wages. In 2023 to 24, 64.33 crore people were employed in India, with 41.7% female LFPR. Earnings, working and living conditions, and evaluates the working of various labor acts. O. Chief Labor Commission. Prevents and settles industrial disputes, enforces labor laws, and promotes the welfare of workers under the central government. O. Employees State Insurance, ES1, scheme, under the Employees State Insurance Act of 1948. Greater than. It insures employees against sickness, maternity, disablement, and death due to employment injury and provides medical care to insured persons. It covers employees in non-seasonal units and earning up to 21,000 rupees per month. O. Employees Provident Fund Organization, EPFO, under Employees Provident Fund Act, 1952. It manages the Employees Provident Fund Scheme, 1952, a retirement savings scheme in which both the employee and employer contribute a fixed percentage of the employee's salary every month. Need for labor reform. Simplifying compliance. Multiplicity of laws leads to difficulty in compliance. O. The Second National Commission on Labor highlighted the multiplicity of labor laws and advocated for consolidation into 4 or 5 comprehensive labor codes.
Second Labor
Modernization of
Commission
archaic laws. Many previous laws originated in colonial or early post-independence and were outdated for contemporary economic and technological realities. OEG, Payment of Wages Act, 1936, which governed how and when wages were paid, applied only to employees, earning up to a certain wage limit, 24,000 rupees per month. Universal coverage. GAP. Approximately 90% of workers work in unorganized sector and traditionally lacked access to social security benefits and comprehensive labor protections. Promoting economic objectives. The new codes aim to boost investment, growth, and jobs by simplifying compliance and improving ease of doing business. Addressing new work forms. The reforms were crucial to formally recognize and provide social security to categories like gig and platform workers and interstate migrant workers. According to Niti Aayog in 2020 to 21, 7.7 million workers were engaged in the gig economy, constituting 1.5% of the total workforce in India. Key terms: gig and platform workers and aggregator. O. Gig worker, a person who works outside a traditional employer-employee relationship. O. Platform workers are those whose work is based on online apps or digital platforms. Egg Ola, Uber, Zomato, Swiggy, Urban Company, etc. O. Aggregator, digital intermediary connecting buyers and sellers of goods and services. Fixed-term employees, FTE, refers to workers employed for a fixed duration based on a contract signed directly between the worker and the employer. O. Employment lapses upon completion of that term unless contract is renewed. No notice is required for retrenchment upon the completion of the term. Layoff, retrenchment, and closure. A layoff occurs when an employer temporarily cannot provide work to a worker for reasons such as a shortage, raw materials, natural calamity, etc. A retrenchment refers to the termination of the service of a worker for any reason other than disciplinary action. A closure refers to the permanent shutting down of an establishment or undertaking. Contract labor is when a worker is engaged in an establishment through a contractor or intermediary, rather than being directly on the payroll of the principal employer. Floor wage, a central government benchmark set to ensure a minimum subsistence level across the country, below which state minimum wages cannot fall. Details and analysis of the 4 codes have been discussed in the subsequent articles. 3.4.1 The Code on Wages 2019 consolidates 4 laws relating to wages and remuneration. Aim: to strengthen workers' rights while promoting simplicity and uniformity in wage-related compliance for employers. Key provisions. Universal minimum wages. The Code establishes a statutory right to minimum wages for all employees across both organized and unorganized sectors. Criteria for wage fixation. Skill levels, geographic areas, and job conditions such as temperature, humidity, or hazardous environments. Introduction of floor wage. A statutory floor wage shall be set by the government based on minimum living standards with scope for regional variation. No state can fix minimum wages below this level, ensuring uniformity and adequacy nationwide. Compensation mandates timely payment and provides for overtime compensation at least 2 times the normal rate. Simplification standardizes key definition, for example, wages, employee, across the entire legislative framework, reducing compliance confusion. Merits/significance, concerns/demerits, reduced regional disparity, as it allows central government to fix national floor wage based on minimum living standards, ensures gender equality, equal wages and working conditions across genders, including transgenders. The implementation. The success of provisions. Effective hinges implementation, especially in the informal and rural sectors. Establishes trust-based ecosystem by decriminalization of offenses. That is, it replaces imprisonment for some first-time offenses with monetary fines. Federal rights may be impacted as right to decide minimum wages in the states will be impacted due to national floor wage. 3.4.2. The Industrial Relations Code 2020 incorporates 3 laws relating to dispute resolution, industrial relations, etc. Aim: to simplify laws related to trade unions, conditions of employment in industrial establishment or undertaking, investigation and settlement of industrial disputes. Key provisions. Trade unions now requires 51% membership to be recognized as the sole negotiating union, streamlining the negotiation process. Greater than. In case of more than one trade union, negotiating council will be formed with representatives of unions having 20% of workers as members. Fixed-term employment, FTE, explicitly institutionalizes FTE, intended to reduce excessive contractualization, and offers cost efficiency to employers. Expanded worker. Definition covers sales promotion staff, journalists, and supervisory employees earning up to 18,000 rupees per month. Higher threshold for layoff/retrenchment/closure. Approval limit raised from 100 to 300 workers. States may enhance the limit further. Broader definition of industry includes all systematic employer-employee activities, regardless of profit or capital. Merits boost skills. For example, reskilling fund, in which employers pays 15 days wages for every worker retrenched for retraining them. Simplified dispute resolution and grievance handling. The codes provide for establishing internal grievance redressal committees, IGRCs, for establishments employing 20 or more workers. Demerits. A higher threshold for removal. It can lead to A. Hire and fire policy. Permanent temporariness. FTS can replace short-term permanent contracts. Weakening collective bargaining strength of workers. 51% risks, marginalizing threshold smaller unions, and centralizing bargaining power. 3.4.3. The Code on Social Security, 2020, incorporates 9 existing Social Security laws. Aim: to extend Social Security to all workers, including unorganized, gig, and platform workers. Key provisions of gig and platform workers and aggregator, legally defined for the first time. Aggregators to contribute 1 to 2% of annual turnover, max 5% of payments to workers, to the Social Security Fund. Expanded ESIC, Employees State Insurance. Coverage. ESIC now applies pan-India, eliminating the criteria of notified areas. Establishments with fewer than 10 employees may voluntarily opt in with mutual consent of employers and employees. Coverage would be mandated for hazardous occupation and extended to plantation workers. Uniform definition of wages. Wages now include basic pay, dearness allowance, and retaining allowance. Greater than 50% of the total remuneration, or such percentage as may be notified, shall be added back to compute. Wages, ensuring consistency in calculating gratuity, pension, and social security benefits. Gratuity for fixed-term employees. Fixed-term employees become eligible for gratuity after 1 year of
ये
continuous
चेंज हुआ
service.
है
Earlier 5
ग्रेजुटी
years.
पहले 5 साल
Merits.
था अब 1 साल कर दिया है
Demerits. National Database for Unorganized Workers. Provides for creating a national digital platform, NDUW, with registration and skill details of unorganized workers. Expanded Social Security, as both organized and unorganized workers are covered. Lack of clarity on funding mechanisms of Social Security, lack of universal Social Security. The coverage of schemes remains dependent on establishment size thresholds. O for ESIC. Establishments with fewer than 10 employees may voluntarily opt in. 3.4.4. The Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, 2020, OSHWC, incorporates 13 central laws focusing on improving workplace safety, health, and working conditions. Aim: to balance the twin objectives of safeguarding worker rights and safe working conditions and creating a business-friendly regulatory environment. Key provisions: unified registration. A uniform threshold of 10 employees is set for electronic registration. Extension to hazardous work. The government can extend the code's provisions to any establishment even, with 1 employee engaged in hazardous or life-threatening occupations. Wider definition of migrant workers. The definition of interstate migrant workers, ISMW, now covers workers employed directly through contractors or migrate on their own. Women's employment. Women can work in all types of establishments and during night hours, before 6 a.m., beyond 7 p.m., with consent and safety measures. National Occupational Safety and Health Advisory Board. A single tripartite advisory board replaces 6 earlier. Boards to set national safety and health standards across sectors, ensuring uniformity and quality. Institutional oversight greater than safety committee to be constituted by factories with 500 plus workers, construction units, 250 plus workers, and mines, 100 plus workers with employer and worker representatives. Welfare officer to be appointed in units where 250 or more workers are ordinarily employed. National Occupational Safety and Health Advisory Board, tripartite body, to be constituted by central government to set national safety and health standards. Contract labor. Norms apply to contractors with 50 plus workers, earlier 20, and employers are allowed to engage contract labor even in defined core activities such as sanitation, subject to conditions. Merits. Strengthened workers' right, for example, working hours, capped at 8 hours in a day and 48 hours a week. Transparency and accountability. Mandatory appointment letters to all workers and though online mechanisms. Boost female labor force participation. Permits women to work in all types of units, including night shifts, subject to their consent and mandatory safety protocols. Demerits narrowed coverage. Threshold of factory license raised. 10 to 20 workers with power, and to 40 in without power, can exclude many small units from safety compliance requirements. 4. Oversight gaps, the shift. Towards self-certification by employers, risks underreporting of violations and inadequate enforcement of safety standards. Conclusion. The new labor codes represent a major reform in India's labor system by balancing worker welfare with business efficiency. They simplify compliance, improve safety, and ensure fair wages, while promoting a more transparent and growth-oriented economy. 3.5. Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights, PPV and FR, Act 2001. Why in the news? Silver Jubilee of the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights, PPV and FR Act 2001 was celebrated. More about the news. The PPV and FR Act was enacted to fulfill the enforcement of the TRIPS, trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, agreement of the WTO that India ratified. The TRIPS agreement offer member countries the choice to protect plant varieties through patents, an effective sui generis system, or a combination of both patent and sui generis systems. A sui generis system refers to a customized, unique legal framework designed to protect something that doesn't fit neatly into existing categories, especially in intellectual property, IP law. O. India opted not to grant patents for plants, instead choosing to safeguard plant varieties through the sui generis system. About PPV and FR Act. Objective: to establish an effective system for the protection of plant varieties, the rights of farmers and plant breeders, and to encourage the development of new plant varieties. About: it is in conformity with the International Union for the Protection of New Varieties of Plants, UPOV, 1978, and also protects the interests of public sector breeding institutions and the farmers. Variety registration. A variety is eligible for registration if it essentially fulfills the criteria of distinctiveness, uniformity, and stability, DUS. Rights under the Act. O. Breeders' rights. Breeders will have exclusive rights to produce, sell, market, distribute, import, or export their protected variety. O. Researchers' rights. Researchers can use any of the registered varieties for conducting experiments or research. This includes the use of a variety as an initial source of variety for the purpose of developing another variety, but repeated use needs prior permission of the registered breeder. O. Farmers' rights. Entitled for registration of a new variety and protection in like manner as a breeder of variety. Farmers' variety can also be registered as an extant variety. Farmers are eligible for recognition and rewards for the conservation of plant genetic resources of land, races and wild relatives of economic plants. Farmers shall not be entitled to sell branded seed of a variety protected under this Act. Benefit sharing. If any organization or individual uses a farmer variety for production, development, or breeding, the farmer must receive a share of the profits. Categories of varieties. Categorized into three major groups. O. Extant varieties. Varieties notified under Section 5 of the Seed Act 1966, and also the varieties in the public domain are called extant varieties. O. Farmers' varieties/community varieties. These varieties are traditionally cultivated and evolved by the farmers in their fields. The wild relatives land races which the farmer possess also fall in this category. O. Essentially derived varieties. These varieties are predominantly derived from an initial variety that retains the characters of the initial variety and is clearly distinguishable from such initial variety at least for one trait. Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Authority, PPV and FRA. It is a statutory body established under PPV and FR Act under O Ministry, the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare. O Headquarters, New Delhi. O primary objectives are to grant intellectual property rights to plant breeders for their innovations in developing new plant varieties, recognize and reward farmers and communities who conserve traditional varieties and biodiversity, promote the protection of farmers' rights to save, use, sow, resow, exchange, share, and sell farm-saved seed of registered varieties. Encourage research and innovation in plant breeding and agriculture. O members. Chairperson and 15 other members, including representatives of farmers, tribal organization, seed, industry and women's organization. Establishments under PPV and FRA. O National Register of Plant Varieties. The National Register contains the names of all registered plant varieties, along with the rights of breeders in respect of registered varieties. O National Gene Bank, established to store the seed material, including parental lines submitted by the breeders, of the registered varieties. O National Gene Fund, utilized for any amount to be paid by way of benefit sharing, compensation payable to farmers and supporting sustainable use of genetic resources. Limitations of the Act. Procedural complexities. There are obstacles in the registration process, and meeting DUS testing criteria can be difficult without technical assistance. Disputes. Potential disputes in benefit and sharing difficulties in balancing between breeders' rights and farmers' rights. Weak enforcement mechanisms. Are there challenges in effective execution due to a lack of awareness among farmers and the non-availability of sufficient enforcement capacity? Balancing rights and access. There are concerns that it can facilitate the monopolization of particular varieties by large firms, which may disadvantage small-scale farmers. Loss of traditional knowledge. lack of sufficient incentives for traditional breeding practices that may hamper the
जब आपको
proliferation of
दिखे ना कि ये
traditional
फालतू के
climate-resilient seed
एडजेक्टिव्स ऐड
varieties.
करके बढ़ा रहा है,
Conclusion.
तब आप समझ जाना है वेस्ट है.
As the
है ना,
Protection
कुछ
of
चीजें
Plant
होती हैं
Varieties
जो
and
काम की
Farmers'
वो
Rights
इंट्रोडक्शन में होता है, कंक्लूजन में
and
होता है.
FR Act
सुन लेना.
2001 completes 25 years. It stands out as a distinctive Indian response to global intellectual property obligations, one that consciously balances innovation with equity. Going forward, simplifying registration processes, strengthening institutional capacity, expanding farmer outreach, and ensuring fair benefit sharing will be crucial to realize the Act's full transformative potential. 3.6 Maritime Sector of India. Why in the news? The Prime Minister unveiled landmark maritime initiatives to boost growth and sustainability in the maritime sector during India Maritime Week 2025. Major initiatives launched in India Maritime Week. Maritime Investment Roadmap. India invited Singapore to join its $1 lakh crore Maritime Investment Roadmap, covering shipbuilding, port modernization, and green fuel collaboration. DigiBandar. A national framework to make all ports data-driven, AI-enabled, and interconnected. O. It aims to improve efficiency, safety, and transparency across India's ports. Green Tug Program. Launched to deploy 100 eco-friendly tugs by 2040, with an investment of about 12,000 rupees a crore, supporting India's transition to cleaner and energy-efficient maritime logistics. India's maritime sector and vision. Trade. Nearly 95% of India's trade by volume and about 70% by value moves through maritime routes, highlighting the sea as the lifeblood of India's commerce. Indian ports. In FY 2024 to 25, major ports handled approximately 855 million tons of cargo, with total port capacity nearly doubling from 1,400 million metric tons per annum (MMTPA) to 2,762 MMTPA. Average vessel turnaround time of major ports has been reduced from 93 hours to just 48 hours, enhancing overall productivity and global competitiveness.
लेकिन मैरीटाइम सेक्टर बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, क्योंकि जब से ईरान वॉर हुई है, ईरान इजराइल वॉर हुई है, तब से बहुत डिफरेंस आ गया है इसके अंदर.
And gross tonnage of the Indian.
Right.
Fleet has increased from 10 million gross tons (mgt) to 13.52 mgt.
आपको updated देखना पड़ेगा.
Inland waterways.
Basic
number of
facts को आप ले
operational
सकते हो.
waterways has increased remarkably from 3 to 29, with an increase of 710% in cargo movement from 2014. Workforce. India's seafarer workforce has surged from 1.25 lakh to over 3 lakh, now accounting for 12% of the global seafaring workforce, making the country one of the world's top 3 suppliers of trained seafarers. Challenges in maritime sector. Connectivity bottlenecks. Lack of adequate last-mile connectivity to the ports through road/rail hinders trade, market access, and increases logistics costs. Transshipment. Competitiveness, limited transshipment, handling capacity, and tough competition from nearby. Transshipment hubs like the Port of Colombo. Indian flag tonnage. High tax provisions with progressively higher tax on larger vessels discourages ship registration under Indian flag. O. India's shipping registry accounts for only 0.8% of the world's vessels. Manufacturing gaps. India's share in global shipbuilding remains modest, at about 1%, and India imports more than 95% of marine engines installed on commercial ships. Maritime security. India faces diverse maritime security threats, including non-state threats, terrorism, smuggling of drugs/arms, piracy, economic threats, IUU fishing, pollution, greenhouse emissions, and state-led threats from China and Pakistan. Major programs for Atmanirbhar maritime sector. Maritime India. Vision 2030, MIV 2030. Launched in 2021, it identifies 10 pivotal themes that will shape India's journey toward becoming a global maritime powerhouse. Maritime Amrit Kaal Vision 2047, a long-term roadmap for India's maritime resurgence, with nearly 80 lakh crore rupees invested in ports, coastal shipping, inland waterways, shipbuilding, and green shipping. Sagamala Program. The program focuses on cutting logistics costs, enhancing trade efficiency, and creating employment through smarter, greener transport networks. Port development. India operationalized its first deep-water international transshipment hub at Visakhapatnam, and the One Nation One Port Process initiative aims to unify documentation and processes across all major ports. Legal transformation. Parliament passed 5 key maritime acts, namely Indian Ports Act,
Visingam Kerala, बहुत important
Merchant
है ये,
Shipping Act
है ना?
2025, Carriage of Goods by Sea Act,
Okay.
Bills of Lading Act, and the Coastal Shipping Act 2025. Favorable investment climate. The government allows 100% foreign direct investment, FD1, in port development. Jalvahak Cargo Promotion Scheme. To promote inland water transport, IWT, it offers 35% reimbursement on operational costs and launching scheduled cargo services on key northwest routes. Greening of maritime sector. Need. Emissions. Maritime transport accounts for approximately 3% of global greenhouse gas, GHG, emissions, and ports are among the major sources of air and water pollution and greenhouse gases, GHGs. Biodiversity. Maritime emissions stress on the rich biodiversity and marine life found in the mangroves, lagoons, coral reefs, and beaches along the coast. Energy security. Conventional shipping relies heavily on imported heavy fuel oil, HFO, and marine diesel, which are affected by volatile global prices and geopolitical shifts. Fulfillment of SDGs. In alignment with SDG goals, International Maritime Organization, IMO, has set a target of 40% CO2 reduction from shipping sector by 2030. Measures Indian Ports Act 2025 mandates adherence to global green norms and introduces robust pollution control and disaster readiness measures to promote sustainability and eco-friendly port practices. It also aligns with the International Convention for the Prevention of Pollution from Ships, MARPOL, and Ballast Water Management. Maritime India Vision, MIV, 2030. It identified key interventions.
Now the question arises, what is this ballast convention? As you are saying, ballast water management. And it also aligns with International Convention on Prevention of Pollution from Ships, MARPOL. Agreed. ठीक है, पॉल्यूशन से रिलेटेड है. अब बैलेस्ट भी तुम्हारा पॉल्यूशन से रिलेटेड है. इंडियन पोर्ट्स एक्ट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है क्योंकि रिसेंट है, 2025 में आया है. एंड ये आपका क्या मैंडेट करता है? ये मैंडेट करता है ग्लोबल ग्रीन नॉर्म्स को, रॉबस्ट पॉल्यूशन कंट्रोल मेजर्स को, डिजास्टर रेडीनेस मेजर्स को, फॉर इको फ्रेंडली पोर्ट प्रैक्टिसेस. अब इसमें बैलेस्ट वाटर मैनेजमेंट है और इंटरनेशनल कन्वेंशन ऑफ प्रिवेंशन ऑफ पॉल्यूशन फ्रॉम शिप्स, मार्पोल है. इन दो को लिया गया है. ठीक है, अब मैं आपको बताता हूँ व्हाट इज. हे गूगल, ओके, यहाँ पे कर रखा था मैंने, लेकिन ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं. बैलेस्ट वाटर मैनेजमेंट है ना. सो वी विल आस्क इसको हटाओ, यहाँ पे लिखते हैं बैलेस्ट वाटर मैनेजमेंट. ठीक है, अभी आपको बताएगा. So ballast water is water taken from into ships tanks to maintain stability, trim and balance during voyages. अब इसने हिंदी में भी लिख रखा है, कोई बात नहीं. जब शिप एम्प्टी होता है तो वो पानी भर लेता है ताकि स्टेबिलिटी बनी रहे, उसको हम बैलेस्ट कहते हैं. अब आपको एक बात पता होगा कि ये है किस लिए. ये है इन्वेसिव एलियन स्पीसीज पे. अब देखो, this led to biological invasion, important term explained. Invasive alien species, non-native organisms that harm local ecosystems, economy and human health. ये होते हैं. For example, zebra mussels in North America, harmful algae bloom, why it is dangerous, biodiversity का loss होता है, disruption of food chain and so on. So देखो, जब शिप एक पोर्ट से बैलेस्ट वाटर लेता है और दूसरे पोर्ट पर डिस्चार्ज करता है, तो साथ में एलियन स्पीसीज, नॉन नेटिव ऑर्गेनिजम्स भी ट्रांसफ़र हो जाते हैं. तो मेन इसकी इन्वेसिव एलियन स्पीसीज के ऊपर है ये. सो इन्वेसिव एलियन स्पीसीज आर नॉन नेटिव ऑर्गेनिजम्स दैट हार्म लोकल सिस्टम्स, इकोनॉमी एंड ह्यूमन हेल्थ. जेब्रा म्यूसल इन नॉर्थ अमेरिका, हार्मफुल एल्गी ब्लूम्स, बायोडाइवर्सिटी का लॉस होता है, फूड चेन का डिसरप्शन होता है, इकोनॉमी लॉस होती है, ह्यूमन हेल्थ रिस्क. ग्लोबल रेगुलेशन मैनेजिंग द इंटरनेशनल मैरीटाइम ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, कन्वेंशन बैलेस्ट वाटर मैनेजमेंट कन्वेंशन 2004 है ना. अब यही मैं बोलना चाह रहा था कि बैलेस्ट कन्वेंशन, बैलेस्ट वाटर मैनेजमेंट कन्वेंशन आपका 2004 में साइन हुआ था, और ये है आपका इन्वेसिव एलियन स्पीसीज पे, ठीक है, इनफोर्स इन 2017। की रिक्वायरमेंट बैलेंस वाटर एक्सचेंज होना चाहिए, मिड ओशन वाटर एक्सचेंज लेस हार्मफुल है, लेस हार्मफुल ऑर्गेनिजम्स, बैलेंस वाटर ट्रीटमेंट सिस्टम्स होने चाहिए, फिल्ट्रेशन, यूवी केमिकल्स टू किल ऑर्गेनिजम्स, बैलेंस वाटर रिकॉर्ड बुक, डॉक्यूमेंटेशन ऑफ ऑपरेशन स्टैंडर्ड्स, D1 स्टैंडर्ड, एक्सचेंज में D2 स्टैंडर्ड, ठीक है। इंडिया का रोल, इंडिया रेटिफाइड द कन्वेंशन। अब ये भी इंपॉर्टेंट है कि इंडिया ने इसको रेटिफाई कर रखा है, तभी ये ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाता है, क्योंकि इंडिया ने अपने खुद के लॉज के अंदर इसको रेटिफाई कर रखा है। इम्प्लीमेंटेड बाय मर्चेंट शिपिंग रूल्स, सिंपल फ्लो, टेक वाटर, कैरी ऑर्गेनिजम्स, डिस्चार्ज, इकोसिस्टम डैमेज। सो बेसिकली इन्वेसिव स्पीसीज प्लस IMO प्लस 2004 कन्वेंशन, 2017 इन्फोर्समेंट, 2017 में इसको इन्फोर्स किया गया था, ठीक है, इंडिया के अंदर। एक MCQ देख लें इसके ऊपर, क्योंकि मेरे को लगता है इम्पोर्टेंट है, ये इम्पोर्टेंट है। देखो एक इसने बना दिया है, with reference to ballast water management, consider the following statement: ballast water discharges can lead to introduction of alien invasive species into new ecosystems। तो पहला सही है, the ballast water convention is implemented in international maritime organization, तो दूसरा भी सही है, ठीक है। D2 स्टैंडर्ड मैंडेट्स ओनली वाले पे बहुत वो हो जाना चाहिए, एक्सचेंज ऑफ बैलेंस वाटर एंड डीप ओशन, ठीक है। सो देखो एक्सचेंज मेथड आपका था D1 में, और D2 में ट्रीटमेंट मेथड था स्ट्रिक्ट, ठीक है। तो ये उल्टा दे रखा है इसने, है ना, एक्सचेंज वाला ऊपर था, एक्सचेंज ऑफ बैलेंस वाटर एंड डीप ओशन वाटर, तीसरा गलत हो गया। इंडिया इज नॉट अ पार्टी टू बैलेंस, तो चौथा गलत हो गया, एंड हेंस वी गेट ओनली 2, ठीक है, B इज द आंसर। अब देखते हैं क्या बोलेगा, ऑब्वियसली वी गेट B, 1 and 2 इज राइट एंड बाकी गलत है। Ballast water management address the environmental risk caused by transfer of aquatic organisms via ship ballast water. The Ballast Water Management Convention 2004 and the International Maritime Organization aims to prevent invasive species threat through standards like D1 and D2. D2 specifically requires treatment of ballast water to remove or kill organism, not just exchange. तो देखो पहला ये बेसिक कॉन्सेप्ट है, बैलेंस वाटर इन्वेसिव स्पीसीज ट्रांसफर, नो कन्फ्यूजन। स्टेटमेंट 2 भी सही है, IMO इज गवर्निंग बॉडी, ये फैक्चुअल है। और D1 में एक्सचेंज मेथड है, मिड ओशन एक्सचेंज, और D2 में ट्रीटमेंट मेथड है, फिल्ट्रेशन प्लस UV। स्टेटमेंट बोल रहा है D2 इक्वल टू एक्सचेंज, जो कि गलत हो गया। UPSC अक्सर टेक्निकल स्टैंडर्ड्स इंटरचेंज कर देता है, ठीक है, ये तो अपनी बकवास कर रहा है। फिर नाउ इंडिया इज नॉट अ पार्टी, ये गलत बात है, इंडिया इज अ पार्टी, 2017 में इनैक्टमेंट किया है, एंड हेंस 2 इज द राइट आंसर, ठीक है। आपको इतना समझ में आया होगा बैलेंस वाटर कन्वेंशन पे, होप, ठीक है। नाउ लेट्स कंटिन्यू।
Like increasing usage of renewable energy, reducing air emissions, optimizing water usage, improving solid waste management, etc. Harit Sagar Green. Port Guidelines.
यहाँ पे अपन
They serve as a comprehensive framework to help Indian ports develop safe, efficient, green, and sustainable operations. Green Tug Transition Program, GTTP. It aims to drive the transition from conventional fuel-based harbor tugs, a marine vessel that helps other vessels by pushing or pulling them, with direct contact or a tow line, to greener, more sustainable alternatives. Harit Nauka, Green Vessel. Initiative, launched to promote adoption of greener technologies in inland waterway vessels. Conclusion. India's maritime sector is undergoing a decisive transformation from a support service for trade to a strategic engine of economic growth, sustainability, and global influence. With rising port efficiency, expanding inland waterways, a globally competitive seafaring workforce, and a strong push towards decarbonization, India is aligning its maritime growth with the twin imperatives of Atmanirbhar Bharat and climate responsibility. 3.7 News in Shorts. 3.7.1 Financial Sector Assessment Program, FSAP. Report by World Bank. The FSAP report has urged India to accelerate financial sector reforms to achieve its long-term goal of becoming a $30 trillion economy by 2047. Key highlights of the report. Resilient. System. Financial is system and stronger, more diversified, with assets rising to about 175% of GDP, from 144% in 2017, with the state playing a dominant role. Digital strength. Public. Digital infrastructure has improved access, efficiency, and financial inclusion. Regulatory progress, reforms by the RBI and SEBI have enhanced supervision, though challenges persist in NBFC oversight and risk management. O. India's expansion of regulatory authority on cooperative banks, tightening of key prudential rules has been appreciated. Market development. Corporate bond and infrastructure financing remains shallow, with investors preferring government securities. Tax disparities. Uneven tax treatment between debt and equity discourages bond market participation. About FSAP genesis. FSAP is a joint World Bank YMF program started in 1999.
World Bank IMF
Conduct.
ये important है, याद रखना
FSAPs
बस.
in advanced economies
ठीक है?
are conducted by the
Financial Sector
IMF.
Assessment Program.
In developing and emerging market economies,
World Bank
FSAPs are
और
conducted
IMF
jointly with the World
program
Bank
है.
by IMF.
ठीक है?
India's previous FSAP was conducted in 2017. 3.7.2. Initial public offering, IPO. India's chief economic advisor raised concerns regarding use of initial public offering, IPO, as an exit route for early-stage investors, rather than an instrument for raising long-term capital. About initial public
IPO
offer,
होता क्या है?
IPO.
Term समझना बहुत important
An
होता है.
IPO is the selling of securities of private companies to the public in the primary market
For the first
time.
ठीक है?
Types of IPO: fixed price issue and book building issue. No fixed price, but a price band. 3.7.3. Digital initiatives launched to modernize warehousing and boost PDS transparency. Union Minister of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution launched major digital initiatives to modernize warehousing operations, improve supply chain efficiency, and enhance transparency across the public distribution system, PDS. Initiative. Details, Ponderan 360. Introduced by Central Warehousing Corporation, CWC. It is a cloud-based ERP platform which integrates HR, finance, warehouse management, contract monitoring, etc. Benefits: real-time monitoring of warehouse operations, standardization across all CWC warehouses. Smart XIM warehouse system. CWC has introduced the Smart XIM warehouse system for container freight stations, CFS/ICD, and general warehouses. It uses technologies like AI, IoT, FASTag, OCR/ANPR, and GNSS to automate key processes. Benefits: gate automation and yard management, cargo tracking, smart inventory. Anadarpan, ASHA platform. Management, introduced by FC1. It is a new microservices-based, mobile-first platform that replaces the existing depot online system. It integrates procurement, storage, movement, sales, labor, and contract management, enabling real-time dashboards and faster decision-making across the food supply chain. The Department of Food and Public Distribution has launched ASHA, Anasahayata, Holistic AI Solution. It is an AI-based platform that allows beneficiaries to share their feedback on ration distribution through AI-enabled calls in their preferred language. 3.7.4. National Industrial Classification, NIC, 2025. Released by MOSP1, the NIC is a fundamental tool for statistical surveys, censuses, economic research, and policy formulation. National Industrial Classification, NIC, 2025. NIC 2025 updates the previous NIC 2008. It was first introduced in 1962. It was prepared by MOSPY in alignment with the International Standard Industrial Classification of All Economic Activities, ISIC, Revision 5, developed by the United Nations Statistics Division, UNSD. Major changes. Structural change. It moves from the 5-digit coding structure of NIC 2008 to a new 6-digit coding structure. It allows for greater granularity and flexibility, enabling better representation of emerging activities. Recognition of indigenous sectors such as Ayush-based healthcare and the handloom industry. It also includes sectors like renewable energy, fintech, e-commerce, and digital intermediation. Salient features of NIC 2025. Enhanced classification of intermediation services. New classes have been created to reflect the growing role of intermediaries in sectors such as power, retail, logistics, healthcare, and education. Representation of digital economy, cloud infrastructure, blockchain, platform-based services, and web search. Portals are distinctly classified. Integration of environmental and green economy. Expanded coverage includes activities related to carbon capture, waste management, and environmental remediation. better aligning with SDGs. Classification is technology agnostic. It means distinctions of activities are not made based on whether an activity is carried out by means of traditional or modern production techniques.
अब security और करते हैं, फिर break लेंगे, ठीक है?
Security. 4.1. White collar terrorism. Why in the news? The National Investigation Agency, NIA, has arrested Dr. from Baramulla, J and K, as the 8th key accused in the last month's Delhi bomb blast case described as an act of white collar terrorism. About white collar terrorism,
NIA.
WCT. Genesis. The concept derives its origin from Edwin Sutherland's concept of white collar crime, which shifts focus to crimes by respected professionals in the society. Definition. It refers to the covert participation of professionals in enabling, designing, financing, or shielding terrorist operations. O. These individuals weaponize intellect rather than arms, crafting encrypted communication systems, laundering funds across borders, forging identities, exploiting bureaucratic loopholes, or leaking classified information. O. There is currently transition from the role of intellectuals as facilitators to direct participation in the acts of terror, as seen in the Delhi blast case. Evolution of white-collar terrorism. In 1980s, white-collar professionals raised funds for violent organizations such as Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO, and the Irish Republican Army,
definition important होती है,
in North
refers
America.
to covert participation of
O.
professional
The
enabling,
engineers in
designing,
ISIS's weapons
financing or
program,
shielding terrorist
doctors in
operation.
Al-Qaeda's
ये होता है
networks,
आपका
and
white
IT
collar
specialists who
terrorism.
created
सारी चीजें important नहीं है भाई, है ना?
sophisticated propaganda
ये पढ़ रहा
machinery.
है, अच्छी बात है,
India.
लेकिन आपको अपना दिमाग
The
लगाना
entire
है.
group of ISIS recruits from Kerala came from well-to-do upper-middle-class families with sound educational background. How it is different from traditional terrorism. Oh, unlike traditional terrorism, which relies on overt violence and intimidation, WCT operates through subversion and enablement. Its motivation is ideological, religious, or political, which distinctly separates it from white-collar crime, which is solely motivated by financial gain. It thrives on deception, legitimacy, and their privileged access to sensitive structures. O. Factors leading to white-collar terrorism. Rise of digital technology. Technical skills and global networks enable precise, high-impact operations, such as drone-based explosives and complex funding mechanisms. Their expertise allows terror plots to be more sophisticated, sustained, and potentially devastating. Difficult to detect. The advantage of institutional cover where universities, hospitals, corporate offices, NGOs, and research labs provide respectability, access to sensitive materials, etc. Transnational linkages and networked radicalism. The Delhi blast module was ideologically and operationally linked to Jaish-e-Mohammed handlers based in Pakistan. Deemed religious superiority. Belief that Sharia-sanctioned governance, judicial, social, and educational setups are far superior to secular, democratic, and modern institutions. Relative deprivation. Theory. In this, extremism is driven by perception of gap between expectations and reality, leading to feelings of injustice and resentment. Social identity. Theory. Grievances can be channeled into a search for an all-encompassing identity. For example, professional designation might be subordinated to an extremist higher purpose identity. Diaspora and connectivity. For example, Kerala has a large diaspora in the Gulf nations, with high rates of passport ownership and frequent international travel, making it easier for recruits. India's counter-terrorism strategy. Investigation and intelligence agencies. National investigation agencies, national security guards, intelligence bureau, etc. Legal regime, Unlawful Activities, Prevention Act, 1967.
UPA.
Preventing Terror Financing, Terror Funding and Fake Currency Cell, TFFC, under NIA.
है, counter-terrorism
Combat
strategy,
Financing of Terrorism,
NSG है,
CFT,
जो कि obviously
Cell under Ministry of Home Affairs, etc.
and
Retaliatory
intelligence bureau है,
Responses,
जो intelligence
Surgical
के
Strike,
लिए important
2016,
है,
Operation
Raw
Sindoor,
भी है, intelligence bureau भी
2025,
है.
etc. Way forward. Stronger regulation and enforcement. Tighten NGO audits, compliance and blacklisting. Empower
इसमें research and analysis wing नहीं लिखा,
ED/CB1 to
लेकिन
probe
raw भी
financial
है,
links to
ठीक है?
WCT. Enhanced institutional oversight. Enforced background checks, forensic audits, and security officers in universities. Digitally track sensitive materials. Global transparency, alignment, adopting FATF, aligned reporting to close funding and oversight gaps. crack down on laundering networks, strengthen KYC with biometrics, monitor high-value transactions and shell entities via FIU, India, and ED, fiscal transparency and accountability, promote citizen-led budget monitoring to curb corruption and misuse of public funds, unified risk intelligence grid, create a national registry of sensitive professions linking IB, NIA, ED, and state police databases. Early radicalization. Warning. Train educators and managers to identify red flags. Enable anonymous reporting and prevention programs. Conclusion. White-collar terrorism is, ultimately, the new face of extremism, quiet, intelligent, and embedded within society itself. In India's case, it is not an anomaly, but an emerging pattern, one that requires urgent recognition and strategic countermeasures. The threat no longer comes only from the shadows of conflict zones. It now emerges from classrooms, clinics, offices, and research labs. And that is what makes it far more formidable. 4.2. News in shorts.
Exercises.
4.2.1. Exercise in news. Exercise. Trishul 2025, Sagar Kavach. Details. A major tri-service drill along western border with Pakistan, across Gujarat and Rajasthan. The annual coastal security exercise conducted by the Indian Coast Guard to assess preparedness of in handling coastal security emergencies.
पाकिस्तान के साथ पार्टिसिपेट नहीं करते लेकिन उस ट्राई सर्विस ड्रिल है ये इंडिया की खुद की.
Garuda Ajaya Warrior, bilateral annual joint military exercise between the Indian Army and Sri Lankan Army. Alternatively, hosted by India and Sri Lanka, bilateral army exercise between India and Vietnam. Aim: to strengthen cooperation and security in the Indo-Pacific region.
इंडियन आर्मी और श्रीलंकन आर्मी
Participating
के बीच में
countries:
होती है.
India, Australia, Japan, and the United States of America.
विन बैक्स
Bilateral
होती
air
है
exercise between
इंडिया
Indian
और
Air Force
वियतनाम के
and French
साथ.
Air and Space Force.
मालाबार क्वाड कंट्रीज
Biennial
में होती है, है
India-UK
ना.
joint military exercise.
गरुड़ होती है
4.2.2.
इंडियन एयर फोर्स और फ्रेंच एयर
GPS
फोर्स
spoofing.
एंड स्पेस फोर्स के साथ.
Airlines have reported a surge in GPS
अजय
spoofing over
होती है
Delhi,
इंडिया और यूके
triggering
के साथ.
government investigations into the unusual navigation disruptions. About GPS spoofing. It is a type of cyber attack that transmits false GPS, global positioning system, signals to mislead navigation systems.
साइबर अटैक है जो
Function.
ट्रांसमिट करता है
It
फॉल्स
exploits the weak
जीपीएस.
signals of
Signal
GPS
misleading.
satellites by overpowering them with fake signals, making receivers show false locations. 4.2.3. Burevestnik missile. Russia has successfully tested its nuclear-powered and nuclear-capable Burevestnik missile. About Burevestnik missile, also called SSC-X-9 Skyfall. Type: long-range, low-flying nuclear-powered cruise missile. It is one of 6 strategic weapons of Russia's new-generation nuclear arsenal. Cruise missile is powered by jet engines for continuous flight throughout their journey. 5. Environment. 5.1. UNF.
राइट. सो अब क्या है, एक बार बुरेवेस्टनिक मिसाइल देख लेते हैं क्या है. ये रशिया की मिसाइल है, न्यूक्लियर पावर्ड है, न्यूक्लियर कैपेबल है ना. और इट इज़ ऑल्सो कॉल्ड SSC-X-9 स्काईफॉल. 6 स्ट्रेटेजिक वेपन्स बाय रशिया, न्यू जनरेशन न्यूक्लियर आर्सनल. लॉन्ग रेंज है, लो फ्लाइंग है, न्यूक्लियर पावर्ड क्रूज मिसाइल है. अब ये जो जीपीएस स्पूफिंग क्या है, बेसिकली जीपीएस का मिसयूज़ कर देते हैं फॉल्स मिसलीडिंग नेविगेशन सिस्टम के लिए. एक वीक सिग्नल ऑफ जीपीएस सैटेलाइट को एक्सप्लॉइट करता है बाय ओवरपावरिंग देम विद फेक सिग्नल्स, मेकिंग रिसीवर्स शो फॉल्स लोकेशन. अभी क्योंकि अपन बैठे हैं अप्रैल में, तो अप्रैल में आपको ये पता होना चाहिए कि रिसेंटली यूएस ने जो ऑपरेशन करके अपने मिलिट्री पायलट्स को जो वहाँ फंस गए थे ईरान के अंदर, उनको जो निकाला है, उसके अंदर जीपीएस स्पूफिंग का यूज़ किया था. वाई? बिकॉज दे यूज अ लॉट ऑफ टैक्टिक्स सो दैट जो ईरानियन रिजीम है या ईरानियन अथॉरिटीज़ है, उनको ये ना पता लग पाए कि जो यूएस सोल्जर है उनके एरिया में वो कहाँ पर है. बहुत सारी टैक्टिक्स प्ले की गई, फॉल्स टैक्टिक प्ले की गई ईरान के साथ, कि उनको पता ना लगे और उनको गलत जगह इंगेज करके मेन जहाँ पे उसको निकालना था पायलट को, वहाँ से निकाल लिया. तो ये एक इम्पॉर्टेंट है, याद रखना. ठीक है, ठीक है यार, थोड़ा पॉज लेते हैं, आते हैं. वील मीट आफ्टर सम टाइम. ठीक है, आप भी ले लो 5-10 मिनट का ब्रेक. ठीक है, ओके. सो लेट्स कंटिन्यू विदाउट एनी फर्दर अडू. स्टार्ट फ्रॉम एनवायरनमेंट. ओके, एक सेकेंड देखना पड़ेगा क्या हुआ ऐसा.
UNFCCC-COP30. YN News. Recently, 30th Conference of Parties, COP30, to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, was held in Belém, Brazil, which also coincided with the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. More on news. Hosted in the Amazon region, the summit was framed as the COP of implementation, COP of truth, and the Forest COP. COP30 aligned with the deadline for countries to submit updated nationally determined contributions, NDC 3.0, in 2025. It concluded with adoption of Belém package by 195 parties, including agreements on topics such as just transition, adaptation finance, trade, gender and technology, etc. Key meetings included OCOP30, UNFCCC, CMP20, Conference of the Parties serving as the meeting of the parties to the Kyoto Protocol, and CMA7, Conference of the Parties serving as the meeting of the parties to the Paris Agreement. Outcome. Primary purpose. Launched by /under. Belém mission to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Global Implementation Accelerator. National Adaptation Plans, NAPs. Implementation. Alliance Implementation Work Program. Mutarao Decision. Action-oriented platform under the COP29 to COP31 Troika to foster enhanced ambition and international cooperation across mitigation, adaptation, and investment voluntary initiative launched to support countries in implementing their NDCs and National Adaptation Plans, NAPs, launched as a new PAS, Plan to Accelerate Solutions, under the COP30 Action Agenda. Supports implementation of NAPs and mobilize public and private investment to advance national adaptation priorities, forests and nature. COP29 to COP31. Troika, UAE, Azerbaijan, Brazil. COP30 and 31 presidencies. UNDP, Italy, Germany, NAP Global NDC Network, Partnership. Tropical Forest Forever Facility, TFFF. Establish a $125 billion fund, Tropical Forest Investment Fund, TFIF, that pays tropical forest nations for countries for maintaining and expanding tropical and subtropical moist broadleaf forests. Mandates that at least 20% of all payments flow indigenous peoples and local to directly communities. IP and LC. Brazil, Indonesia, DRC, China, etc. India has joined as an observer, trustee and World Bank. Interim host. Resilient agriculture investment for net zero. A project to restore 3 million hectares of degraded farmland using blended finance and private capital. Brazil and 10 partner nations. Land degradation, RAIZ. Accelerator. Based on Greenway and Eco-Invest in Brazil. Coordinated by FAO, Food and Land Use Coalition International Land, CGIAR, G20. Hosted by Brazil's Ministry of Agriculture under the FAO FAST Partnership. Scaling JRED Plus Coalition. Jurisdictional Reducing Emissions from Deforestation and Forest Degradation Plus. A new coalition of governments, indigenous peoples, investors, intermediaries, standard setters, and civil society. Offers a credible, mature pathway to mobilize $3 to $6 billion per year by 2030 to halt and reverse tropical deforestation. UK, Singapore, Costa Rica, Ethiopia, Ghana, Guyana, Kenya, etc. Baku to Belém roadmap to 1.3 trillion tripling of adaptation finance. Finance and economy. The official pathway to mobilize the new collective quantified goal, NCQG, of $1.3 trillion per year by 2035. Increase adaptation finance to $120 billion per year as part of the broader $300 billion per year in climate finance, known as New Collective Quantified Goal, NCQG, agreed at COP29, COP29, and 30 presidencies. Baku Adaptation Roadmap. Approves and establishes the work for 2026 to 2028. The Paris the Next Global Stocktake of Until Agreement. FINI. Fostering investable national implementation. Make national adaptation plans, NAPs, investable and implementation ready. develop project pipelines of $1 trillion in adaptation investment pipelines by 2028, with 20% coming from private investors, supported by Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, and the Green Climate Fund, GCF. Open Coalition on Compliance Carbon Markets, led by Atlantic Council's Climate Resilience Center and Natural Resources Defense Council, initiative to harmonize carbon pricing and integrity standards across national borders and collaborate in defining best practices for monitoring, reporting, and verification, MRV. Brazil, China, EU, UK, Canada, Germany, Singapore, etc. Belém Declaration for Green Industrialization, accelerating decarbonization of heavy-emitting industries and promoting green industrialization in pursuit of global climate and development goals. 35 countries and organizations, such as UNDP, UNIDO, etc. Plan to accelerate the expansion and resilience of power grids. Plan to accelerate coal transitions. Pact, Belém, 4 times pledge on sustainable fuels. Coordinate. Energy and infrastructure relevant stakeholders towards grid. Expansion and a renewables-powered future. A roadmap to fast-track the transition from coal to clean energy while ensuring energy security. Quadruple the use of sustainable fuels, hydrogen, biofuels, e-fuels, by 2035 compared to 2024 levels. Green Grids Initiative, GGY. Powering Past Coal Alliance, PPCA, Italy, Japan, India, and Brazil, etc. International Energy Agency, IEA, will track progress. Social and Health. BLM Health Action Plan. World's first international climate adaptation plan dedicated to health. Greater than 30 countries and 50 organizations. $300 million in initial funding to build climate-resilient health sector, especially in the Global South. Belém Gender Action Plan, GAP, Declaration on Information Integrity on Climate Change. Belém Declaration on Hunger, Poverty, and People-Centered Climate Action, designed to implement Lima Work Program on Gender. It establishes shared international commitments to address climate disinformation and promote accurate, evidence-based information on climate issues. First time, the topic of information integrity has been included in the COP Action Agenda. It treats information pollution as a structural barrier and aims to protect public trust in climate science. To promote actions that address the unequal ways climate change affects populations worldwide, particularly the most vulnerable. Adopted by parties at COP30 for 2026 to 2034. Global Information Climate Change endorsed by Brazil, Canada, Chile, Denmark, etc. Initiative for Integrity On, signed by 43 countries and the European Union. 2030 Strategy. Call to action on integrated fire management and wildfire resilience. Enabling climate-vulnerable nations to build early warning systems. Enabling climate-vulnerable nations to build early warning systems. Acknowledges international cooperation, integrated fire managements. 4. Climate risk and early warning systems, CRUISE. Brazil. Significance of the COP30. Implementation over promises. The summit shifted global climate governance from pledge-making to implementation and accountability. Adaptation priority. It marked a global push for adaptation finance and operational frameworks addressing long-standing global South concerns. Forest leadership. The TFFF introduces a scalable global model for forest conservation, not tied to carbon markets. Finance. Overhaul. The $1.3 trillion US dollars per year goal represents the most ambitious climate finance mobilization target. Multilateral resilience. Despite geopolitical tensions, all 195 parties adopted the Belém package. Way forward. Closing the gaps. Countries must ensure that NDC 3.0 includes economy-wide absolute emission reduction targets. Our policies need to integrate enabling conditions, grids, storage, to make these targets credible, as seen in the Belém mission to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The promised finance and technology support must materialize. Developed nations should spell out contributions to the NCQG and fulfill fast start adaptation pledges. Operationalizing mechanisms. Parties should finalize GGA, Global Goal on Adaptation Indicators, and build data systems for adaptation monitoring. O. The Global Implementation Accelerator, GIA, and BELEM 1.5 mission need clear mandates and resources to assist vulnerable countries, strengthening equity and collaboration, the CBDR, common but differentiated responsibilities, principle must guide mitigation timelines and finance flows, international cooperation platforms, for example, UNFCCC, WTO Climate Trade Dialogue, should be used to resolve tensions over carbon borders and trade measures. O. A mutual recognition agreement where a developing country's verifiable carbon price is accepted by border. Systems to avoid double taxation. O. Effective operationalization of TFFF by closing the capitalized...
Actually, I have to... आपको कंटिन्यू हो जाएगा. ठीक है, एक सेकंड.
Gap can create long-term conservation incentives. Engaging non-state actors. Governments need to build on private sector pledges, for example, from TFFF or ocean breakthroughs, by creating enabling environments, clear regulations, incentives, and monitoring to ensure these voluntary commitments yield real emission cuts. Public engagement, as seen in the BELEM Climate March, also needs institutional pathways to inform policymaking. Conclusion. COP30 signaled a shift toward operationalizing the Paris Agreement by expanding adaptation finance, refining implementation mechanisms, and institutionalizing forest conservation. The BELEM package signals a pivotal shift toward implementation and inclusion. The task now is to implement BELEM's blueprint by raising NDC ambition further, executing forest and ocean pledges, and swiftly operationalizing climate finance flows. 5.1.1. Other important outcomes of COP30. Initiative/coalition/outcome, launched by Systematic Observation, Impact Bond. Systematic Observations, Financing Facility, SOFF, a United Nations fund created by UNEP, WMO, and UNDP. Details. World's first impact bond on weather and climate data announced as part of COP30 UNFCCC Action Agenda. Aim, finance instrument to strengthen resilience and early warnings worldwide. O seeks initial capitalization of $200 million by end of 2026. Climate and Health Funders Coalition, CHFC, plan to accelerate the solution, BAS, on multi-level governance. Global Mutirao against extreme heat/beat the heat implementation drive. Private institutional and individual funders like Bloomberg Philanthropies, Gates Foundation, etc. Coordinated by COP30 Presidency, Brazil's Ministries of Environment and Cities, and UN Habitat, COP30 Presidency, and UNEP-led Cool Coalition. Significance: help 30 least developed countries, LDCs, and small island developing states, SIDs, meet Global Basic Observing Network, GBON, standards. Committed an initial $300 million for integrated action to tackle climate change and its consequences on health. The committed funders currently include immediate focus, extreme heat, air pollution, climate infectious diseases, critical climate and sensitive health data for decision makers, targets integration of multi-level structures into 100 countries, nationally determined contribution, NDCs, by 2028 and 120 by 2030. Joined by 185 cities in implementing heat action plans and nature-based solutions, for example, urban forests, green roofs. Aim: to reduce heat risks for 3.5 billion people globally and integrate solutions into 50 national adaptation frameworks by 2030. Food waste breakthrough. Led by UNEP. 72 nations have endorsed Global Cooling Pledge, reduce cooling-related emissions by 68% by 2050. Launched as a 2030 climate solution under Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action. Target: halving global food waste and up to 7% reduction in methane emissions by 2030. Funding support: Global Environment Facility commits $3 million. Participation: country champions Japan and the United Kingdom. Include Brazil. Oceans Breakthroughs Dashboard. Global Network of Regenerative Seascapes, Marine Biodiversity and Ocean Health, MBOH, Toolkit, No Organic Waste, NOW, Indigenous Land Tenure Commitments, ILTC, Global Carbon Harvest Coalition, One Ocean Partnership, supported by Global Methane Hub, 15 governments spanning Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the Pacific, Brazil, India, and Kenya's national agricultural research institutions. To track progress within 5 ocean sectors, namely marine conservation, renewable energy, shipping, aquatic food, and coastal tourism, that could help cut emissions by up to 35% by 2050, designed to mobilize at least $20 billion for a regenerative blue economy. To enable stakeholders to take informed action to protect marine biodiversity and economic resilience. Commits to cutting 30% of methane emissions from organic waste by 2030.
No organic waste, okay?
Set a goal to advance ownership and protection of 160 million hectares of indigenous and Afro-descendant groups. Land. 4. It will accelerate and scale field research on soil organic carbon, biochar, and enhanced rock weathering. Brazilian Sustainable Taxonomy, BST. Integrated Forum on Climate Change and Trade, IFCCT. Utilities for Net Zero Alliance, UNEZA. Established at COP28 with adoption of UAE Declaration of Action. Launched to define sustainable investments. To help countries collectively explore practical approaches to make trade a driver of a just, sustainable, and inclusive transition. It raised its annual investment targets to $148 billion at COP30. Members collectively aim to invest approximately $1 trillion by 2030 to expand clean energy and modernize power grids.
10th anniversary थी
5.1.2 India's position at COP30. Why in news? Key developing country negotiating blocs at COP. India's negotiating posture at the COP30 in Belém was sharply focused on implementation and operationalizing climate justice. Core objectives. Grouping. G77. Members and composition. The countries, members. Largest coalition of developing 134. Now, comprising India's strategy, delivered across the G77 plus China, BASIC, and LMDC groupings, rested on these non-negotiable principles. LMDC, like-minded developing countries. A more hardline group within the G77, including countries like India, China, Bolivia, Cuba, Egypt, and Iran. BASIC. Large, rapidly foray coalition of developing economies. Brazil, South Africa, India, and China.
China is way ahead.
India's position at COP30. Key area equity and climate justice. India's stance and statements. Reiterated that equity and common but differentiated responsibilities, CBDRRC, remain the central cornerstone of the global climate regime.
Right.
Cautioned that the burden of mitigation must not be shifted to those with the least responsibility in causing the problem. Climate finance as a legal obligation adaptation and the global goal. Highlighted that the implementation of Article 9.1 is a legal obligation for developed countries to provide finance. Stated that finance remains the key barrier to raised ambition and requested a clear, universally agreed definition climate finance. Declared that COP30 must be the COP of adaptation. Welcome progress on the Global Goal on Adaptation, GGA. Supporting a minimum package of indicators provided there is flexibility for national circumstances. Just Transition Mechanism. Welcomed the establishment of the Just Transition Mechanism as a significant milestone to operationalize equity. Insisted that transition work programs must result in action-oriented institutional arrangements that are people-centric. Mitigation and net zero responsibilities, unilateral trade measures, technology, transfer and access, multilateralism and diplomacy. Stressed that developed countries must reach net zero earlier to preserve equitable carbon space. Called for developed nations to invest more in negative emissions technologies. Called for unilateral trade restrictive climate measures to be rejected as they act as instruments of protectionism. Asserted that technology access is a right, not a bargaining tool. Emphasized that intellectual property and market barriers must not hinder technology transfer to developing nations. Expressed unwavering support for multilateralism and international cooperation. Praised the Brazilian presidency for leadership rooted in the spirit of mutirão, inclusion and balance. 5.1.3 Climate Finance.
ये
Why in
बहुत
the
important
news?
है.
India, along with 12 other developing countries and African island states. Climate Commission,
न्यू क्लाइमेट पैसा देने में सबको मौत आती है, याद रखना. बहुत सारे क्वेश्चन बोलते हैं फाइनेंस करेगा, जबकि वो नहीं होता है. क्लाइमेट फाइनेंस
These plans were unveiled at the
करता
recently
है
concluded
particularly.
Conference of Parties, COP30, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC, at Belém, Brazil.
Belém, Brazil, right?
12 developing countries are Cambodia, Colombia, Kazakhstan, Lesotho, Mongolia, Nigeria, Oman, Panama, Rwanda, the Dominican Republic, Togo, and South Africa. About the platforms, country platforms are strategic, translate climate that. Investment flows with the national priorities of each country. Funding. The platforms will be supported under the Green Climate Fund's GCF Readiness Program. The Readiness Program is as the largest climate action capacity building facility for developing countries. GCF funds already support 2 existing platforms, the Brazil Country Platform and the Caribbean Regional Platform. These platforms seek to replace a fragmented project approach by helping to coordinate various public and private, international and local stakeholders. Issues related to climate finance, ambition without guaranteed delivery. Targets rely on voluntary flows, not guaranteeing the public, pledges and private concessional funding vulnerable countries need. Developing nations require an estimated $1.3 trillion each year for climate action. Climate finance viewpoints, historical responsibility. Developed countries hold the bulk of cumulative emissions, yet contribute insufficient public finance. However, the new collective quantified goal, NCQG, agreed upon at COP29 is just $300 billion annually. Concessionality and access issues. LDCs and SIDs face barriers to access. Blended instruments risk creating debt unless grant elements are preserved. Over-reliance on private finance. Private capital prefers bankable mitigation projects over adaptation and L&D, which require grants. Unspent funds at GCF. Despite the GCF having over $19 billion committed across 134 developing countries, it faces criticism from developing countries for its difficult to comply with dispersal mechanisms. Distributional inequality. LDCs, SIDs, and indigenous peoples face the highest climate risks. Equity, delaying intergenerational adaptation finance to 2035 weakens future resilience. India's stand, reaffirmed equity, and CBDRRC oppose shifting the burden to private finance. Of the total amount of GCF funding for projects under implementation, only approximately 40% has been dispersed. The 2035 problem, slow timelines. Targets, pushing major increases to 2035 are politically easier but problematic. For countries facing immediate climate impacts. Transparency and additionality. Concerns remain regarding double counting and whether mobilized private finance is truly additional to existing ODA, official development assistance. Climate finance and India. India's climate finance needs, Terry. Net zero by 2070 requires approximately $10.1 trillion. NDC implementation, 2015 to 2030. Estimated $2.5 trillion to 6 to 8 trillion. Steps taken to mobilize climate finance, domestic. Sovereign green bonds, SGRBS, FY23, 16,000 crore rupees, FY24, 20,000 crore rupees. Carbon credit trading scheme, CCTS, established the Indian carbon market, ICM. GHG intensity targets notified for various sectors. RBI and climate risk, draft disclosure framework proposes banks/NBFCs to disclose climate risks. Framework for green deposits issued to prevent greenwashing. IFSC Gift City, developing as a sustainable finance hub for foreign capital. Way forward for India and other developing countries. Push for predictable public flows and a defined timeline for the $300 billion mobilization target. Safeguard concessionality. Insist on grant elements for adaptation/L&D and instruments avoiding harmful debt. Standardize mobilization accounting. Advocate for transparent methodologies to avoid double counting. Strengthen domestic frameworks. Align climate finance taxonomy and disclosure norms with global standards, ISSB. Create bankable pipelines with domestic safeguards. Develop sovereign pipelines, renewables, resilience, tied to social/environmental safeguards. Regional cooperation on blended facilities. Explore South-South blended mechanisms aligning private capital with public interest. Regional cooperation on blended facilities. Explore South-South blended mechanisms aligning private capital with public interest. Conclusion. The Country Platform Initiative is an effort by the Global South to take leadership of climate finance and reshaping the architecture of global climate cooperation. COP30 created a political framework and introduced promising vehicles. But success now depends on implementation and transparency. Belem's credibility rests on turning commitments into predictable, public, and concessional finance. Most importantly, delivery instruments must protect vulnerable countries from taking on new debt. 5.2. Urban air pollution. Why in the news? Commission for Air Quality Management, CAQM, implemented Stage 3 Graded Response Action Plan, GRAP, across the entire NCR, highlighting the issue of urban air pollution in India. About Graded Response Action Plan, GRAP. It is an emergency response mechanism based on AQY level of Delhi implemented by Commission for Air Quality Management, CAQM. It was first created on Supreme Court directions, MC Mehta versus Union of India. It has 4 stages, based on AQY levels for Stage 1. Poor category, AQI 201 to 300. O Stage 2, very poor category, AQI 301 to 400. O Stage 3, severe category, AQI 401 to 450. O Stage 4, severe plus category, AQI 451 plus. Causes of urban air pollution in India. Meteorological factors. Winter weather conditions like temperature, inversion, and low wind speeds trap pollutants near the ground and prevent their dispersion in cities like Delhi. Pre-monsoon dust transport from Thar Desert and Middle East into Indian cities in northern regions like Delhi. Urban and industrial factors. Pollution from industries like cement, steel, refineries, brick kilns, for example, refineries and chemical industries in Mumbai's Chembur area. Vehicles. Delhi's vehicles doubled since 2005. Construction and demolition activities. For example, rapid construction along Gurugram's Golf Course Road, etc. Urban layout. Narrow streets with tall buildings, street canyon effect, trapping pollutants. Shrinking green/blue spaces due to unplanned urban expansion, reduces natural filtration, etc. Transboundary pollution. Pollution in Delhi due to seasonal stubble burning in neighboring states. Worsened air quality over Chennai due to aerosols transported from North India, etc. Other sources.
That is the
ground level
most
ozone
important reason.
forms when NOx and VOCs react under strong sunlight. Burning firecrackers during festivals. Open waste burning. Frequent landfill fires. For example, Delhi, Ghaziabad, Palswa Ghazipur landfills, etc. Impact of air pollution. Health impacts. Cardiovascular disease, respiratory infections, irritation in eyes, etc. For example, air pollution linked to approximately 15% of all deaths in Delhi in 2023. Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air. Environmental impacts of climate change. Pollutants like black carbon and ground-level ozone contribute to global warming. Acid rain. Emissions of SO2 and NOx react with water vapor to form acids, damaging soils, crops, forests, monuments and aquatic ecosystems. For example, yellowing and surface corrosion in Taj Mahal. Economic losses. India lost economic output equivalent to 9.5% of GDP in 2022 due to air pollution. The Lancet Countdown on Health and Climate Change Report 2025. Social impacts. A reduced quality of life due to poor visibility, closure of schools and offices, a disproportionate impact on vulnerable groups like children, elderly, and poor.
India lost
Steps taken to curb the air pollution.
of GDP
National Clean Air Program, NCAP, aims to reduce particulate matter concentrations by 40% by 2026 in 131 cities. Graded Response Action Plan, GRAP. Emergency measures to combat air pollution in Delhi, NCR. Commission for Air Quality Management, CAQM, 2021. Statutory body established for improved air quality management in the National Capital Region. Measures for vehicular emission control, leapfrogging, to BS6 fuel and vehicle standards, 2020 nationwide. Transition to 20%. Ethanol, blended petrol, E20. ORFID system for toll and environment compensation charge on commercial vehicles entering Delhi. Promotion of electric mobility under PME Drive Scheme. Electric Mobility Promotion Scheme 2024, EMPS 2024, OSATAT Initiative for Creating Compressed Biogas, CBG Ecosystem, Air Quality Monitoring and Data Systems, O National Air Quality Index, AQ1, launched in 2015, C Infographic, O Installation of Online Continuous Emission Monitoring System, OCEMS, in red category, Air Polluting Industries in Delhi NC, O System of Air Quality and Weather Forecasting and Research, SAFAR portal provides air quality updates. Municipal Solid Waste, MSW, and Construction Dust, Control O Guidelines for C and D Waste Management and Dust Mitigation, 2017. O Biomining and Bioremediation of Legacy, Waste 2. Prevent landfill fires. O Shifting of all operational brick kilns to zigzag technology in Delhi and NCR. Challenges in curbing air pollution in India. Policy and governance challenges. O Transboundary pollution. About 30% of urban pollution originates outside city limits, yet National Clean Air Program, NCAP, city plans operate in silos. O. Reactive measures. Focus on crisis time and temporary actions like GRAP, smog towers, rather than continuous long-term pollution control. O. Fragmented governance. Involvement of multiple agencies, central government, Delhi government, multiple NCR state governments, CPCB, with differing responsibilities and budgetary resources. O. Poor enforcement, persistent stubble burning, unregulated construction, outdated industrial boilers, etc. Monitoring and data limitations. O. Sparse network, many smaller towns and rural areas. Pollutant, WHO 2021, guideline. India, NAAQS, lack PM 2.5/PM 10 monitors. O lacks national standards. India's air pollution standards are more relaxed in comparison to WHO's prescribed guidelines. PM 2.5, PM 10, 5 micrograms per cubic meter, 15 micrograms per cubic meter, 40 micrograms per cubic meter,
PM 2.5
60
5 होना चाहिए
micrograms
वर्ल्ड
per
में,
cubic
इंडिया ने
meter.
बोला 40 होना
Other
चाहिए.
challenges.
WHO ने बोला 15 होना चाहिए, PM 10 इंडिया ने बोला 60 होना चाहिए. NO2
40
10 होना
micrograms
चाहिए,
per cubic
WHO
meter.
ने इंडिया ने बोला 40
O
होना
slow
चाहिए. तो
EV
40 60
penetration
40
in
याद
public
रखना.
transport compared to China's full
PM
electric bus
2.5,
fleets. For
PM
example,
10 और
Shenzhen.
NO2.
O heavy reliance on coal-based energy due to rising power demand. O public apathy and limited awareness about chronic health impacts of PM 2.5/PM 10 exposure. O MSMEs like small brick kilns and dyeing units lack funds to afford pollution control equipment. Way ahead. Parliamentary Standing Committee recommendations to reduce stubble burning. O price system like minimum support price, MSP, to guarantee returns when farmers sell stubble. O real-time mapping of crop acreage and forecasting of crop maturity to assess district-wise crop yields for the better planning. O unified national policy for integrating agricultural residue into bioenergy generation. Governance and institutional measures. O strengthen legal and institutional framework. Give NCAP statutory backing and empower pollution control boards for strict enforcement. Interstate and regional coordination. Adopt airshed-based planning for coordinated action on stubble burning, transport, and industrial emissions. Set up regional clean air councils modeled on international cross-border pollution frameworks. O long-term planning. Convert G, RAP-style triggers into year-round city-specific clean air action plans. O. Economic and financial measures. O technology-driven air. Quality management. Adopt predictive systems using AI/ML to forecast pollution. Surges and identify real-time sources allowing preventive rather than reactive action. O ensure stable and adequate funding. Increase predictable budget allocations and adopt innovative tools, like green bonds and pollution taxes. O de-risk clean technology. Investments. Support risk sharing for renewable energy and EV sectors and reform DISCOM finances to lower investment risks. Best practices. Emissions trading. Surat's particulate emissions trading system, 2019, cut industrial pollution by 20 to 30%. Urban greening. Tirunelveli's Miyawaki forests reduced PM 2.5, showing microforests on unused land deliver measurable benefits. Sustainable transport, London's congestion pricing, Paris's car-free days, Amsterdam's 2030 plan to ban fossil fuel vehicles, Beijing model electrification of major public transport, tightened vehicular emission norms. Conclusion. India's clean air journey requires moving from short-term fixes to sustained, technology-driven and well-coordinated action. A multi-sector, data-backed approach is essential for achieving durable, healthier air for all. 5.3. India's renewable energy growth. Why in the news?
Renewable energy.
In 2025, India's renewable energy sector achieved two historic milestones. Renewable energy met 51.5% of total electricity demand, July 2025.
Very good.
And share of installed electricity capacity of non-fossil fuel sources reached 51%, September 2025.
Basically, दोनों 51% हो
About
गए.
renewable energy,
Renewables 51.5 of total demand
It
हो
is
गया.
energy
July
derived from
2025
natural
में share of
sources that are
installed
replenished
capacity
at a
of
higher rate
non-fossil
than they are
fuel sources
consumed.
वो
For example, solar
50%,
energy,
51% हो
wind
गया. Very
energy,
good.
geothermal energy, hydropower, ocean energy, bioenergy. India's key targets for renewable energy sector. So
Solar,
nationally
wind,
determined
geothermal,
contributions,
hydro, ocean
NDC,
and bio.
target,
ये हैं हमारे
updated in 2022.
NDC.
Achieving 50% of cumulative electric power, installed capacity from non-fossil fuel-based energy resources. By 2030, achieved 5 years ahead. Upanchamrita. Targets for 2030, greater than meet 50% of energy.
तो हमने अचीव कर लिया है, ठीक है?
From
NDC
renewable
का पहला
energy.
टारगेट.
Reach non-fossil energy capacity of 500 gigawatts. Status of India's renewable energy, RE sector. Installed electricity capacity of non-fossil fuel sources, renewable energy, hydro and nuclear. 256.09 gigawatts, September 2025. See infographic for energy-wise breakdown. Global ranking, IRENA RE statistics, 2025. Fourth in renewable energy installed capacity. Fourth in wind power. Third largest ethanol producer and third in solar power capacity.
अभी बहुत बकवास रखी है यार. थोड़ा विजन में थोड़ा सा ये बकवास सा लगता है ना. इतनी सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन एक जगह रहता है, थोड़ा वो इंटरैक्टिव नहीं बना रखा है इन्होंने बिल्कुल भी. लेकिन मैं आपको एक चीज़ बताता हूँ. आपको चैट जीपीटी पे ले चलते हैं. चैट जीपीटी पे ओके प्रोजेक्ट्स सॉरी नॉट प्रोजेक्ट्स, चैट करना है, ठीक है. अब यार मैं एक चीज़ बताता हूँ. इसके अंदर अपन पंचामृत आपको दिखाता हूँ. व्हाट इज़ पंचामृत स्ट्रैटेजी ऑफ इंडिया? स्ट्रैटेजी ऑफ GOI इन 100 वर्ड्स. चलो पूरा ही अच्छे से लिख देते हैं. वो अच्छे से UPSC के लिए सेट कर रखा है तो अच्छे से आएगा. अब ये इम्पोर्टेंट है यार, सारी चीज़ें अपनी एक तरफ और ये एक तरफ. अब एक बार आप ये भी समझ लो.
Panchamrit's strategy was announced by India during the COP26 in Glasgow by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It refers to 5 key climate commitments Amrit Tattva, aimed at tackling climate change and guiding India's long-term sustainable development. The 5 pillars of Panchamrit. 1. Non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt by 2030. Image. India aims to install 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel energy capacity, solar, wind, hydro, nuclear. Focus is on reducing dependence on coal and oil. Have 2. 50% of energy requirements from renewables by 2030.
Second वाला हो गया.
Image. Half of India's total energy demand will be met through renewable sources, includes solar, wind, and other clean
ये हमने
energy.
अभी 2025 में कर लिया.
3. Reduction of total projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons by 2030. Image. India will cut 1 billion tons of carbon emissions compared to projected levels. Achieved via cleaner technology and efficiency. Shahashtra 4. Reduce carbon intensity of GDP by 45% by 2005 levels. Image. Carbon intensity equals emissions per unit of GDP. India will make its economy less carbon intensive. Month 5. Net zero emissions by 2070. Image. India targets net zero emissions by 2070.
ये बहुत
Balance
important है.
between
लास्ट
emissions
वाला
and
ना
absorption via
2070
forests,
वाला
tech,
बहुत
etc.
important है.
By explanation. Dig bhai. Panchamrit basically India ka climate action roadmap hai. UPSC के लिए important point ये है कि ये commitments legally binding नहीं but internationally declared pledges हैं.
Pledges हैं.
Focus high development plus environment balance, common but differentiated responsibility. Carbon intensity reduction का मतलब growth को रोकना नहीं, बल्कि cleaner बनाना है. Net zero 2070. India need deliberately 2050. Developed countries see later target liar because of development needs.
बिल्कुल.
Trap alert: 500 gigawatt equal total installed electricity capacity नहीं surf non-fossil capacity है. 50% equals energy requirement, not installed capacity. Carbon intensity, total emissions. Final one-line summary: Punch equals India's 5 climate commitments announced at
installed
COP26,
capacity
focusing on
50% की बात
renewable
नहीं हो रही है.
expansion,
We are
emission
talking
reduction,
about
and
जो
net
हमें
zero
requirement है
by
as a
2070.
country
अगर तू
उसकी.
चाहे तो मैं इस पर UPSC level MCQs बना देता हूँ with traps.
Okay, more detailed in 5 points. Okay. देखो मैं थोड़ा वैसे कर देता हूँ, थोड़ा अच्छे से बता देगा ये और अच्छे से. एक बार वापस
ठीक है भाई, अब मैं तुझे पंचामृत स्ट्रेटजी को exactly UPSC ready 200 words
मैं
based style में समझाता
स्ट्रैटेजीज
हूँ.
बना रखी हैं. ठीक है.
देख भाई, पंचामृत स्ट्रेटजी इंडिया का क्लाइमेट रोड मैप है जो COP26 में नरेंद्र मोदी ने अनाउंस किया था. 1. 500 gigawatt non-fossil capacity. इसका मतलब है कि इंडिया अपनी इलेक्ट्रिसिटी जनरेशन का huge part solar, wind, hydro, nuclear से करेगा. Important trap: ये total capacity नहीं सिर्फ non-fossil part है.
Non-fossil part.
2. 50% energy from renewables. ये installed capacity नहीं बल्कि actual energy consumption share की बात हो रही है. UPSC यही confused करता है. 3. 1 billion ton emission reduction. ये absolute cut नहीं है बल्कि projected future emissions से reduction है. MATLAB growth continue करेगा but cleaner way mean. 4. 45% carbon intensity reduction. Carbon intensity equals emissions per GDP. MATLAB economy grow karagi but less pollution per unit output. Yeah, development plus environment balance ka core hai. 5. Net zero by 2070. India need 2050 instead 2070 target liya because developing country hai. Net zero ka MATLAB zero emissions nahi balki emik absorb balance. Final samaj. Ye strategy India ko green growth model pe shift karti hai without sacrificing development.
ठीक है, गुड इनफ. और ये भी जो है ना बाय 2030 है 45% कार्बन इंटेंसिटी रिडक्शन बाय 2030 एंड फ्रॉम 2005 लेवल वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट कि 2005 का जो लेवल था उससे. और आप नेट ज़ीरो एमिशन का मतलब समझते हो? व्हाट इज़ नेट ज़ीरो एमिशन? नेट ज़ीरो एमिशन होता है जब टोटल हमारा जो एमिशन है उतना ही हम ग्रीनरी या फॉरेस्ट्री के थ्रू उसको कट भी कर रहे हों, है ना. नेट ज़ीरो का मतलब ये होता है कि ओवरऑल एमिशन अपने कार्बन एमिशन ज़ीरो हो जाए. 50 वर्ड्स देखो छोटा सा समझाते हैं. ये
Net zero emissions means balancing the amount of greenhouse gases emitted with the amount removed from the atmosphere. A country can still emit, but must offset it through forests, carbon capture, or clean technologies, so that net emissions become zero, helping to limit global warming.
थोड़े नाटक है मैं करता हूँ ऐसे, थोड़ा और अच्छे से आपको समझ में आएगा. ठीक है.
देख भाई, नेट जीरो का सिंपल मतलब है जितना कार्बन तू एटमॉस्फेयर में डाल रहा है उतना ही तू वापस आता भी रहा है. जीरो एमिशन नहीं, बैलेंस बनाना है. फॉरेस्ट्स, कार्बन कैप्चर और क्लीन एनर्जी से ये अचीव होता है. एंड गोल, एनवायरनमेंट को डैमेज किए बिना डेवलपमेंट कंटिन्यू करना.
ठीक है. तो इसका मतलब क्या है कि एटमॉस्फेयर में फॉर एग्जांपल हमने एक्स अमाउंट ऑफ कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड डाला तो हमें ग्रीन फॉरेस्ट लगा के अफॉरेस्टेशन करके CCUS कार्बन कैप्चर एंड यूटिलाइजेशन करके एंड और क्लीन एनर्जी सॉल्यूशन से हमें फिर वो CO2 को हटाना भी है। ऐसा नहीं है कि आप सिर्फ डालोगे, जितना डालोगे उतना हटाओगे। इन्वायरमेंट को डैमेज किए बिना डेवलपमेंट करना है, ये होता है अपना नेट ज़ीरो एमिशन का टारगेट। ठीक है, नाउ मूविंग फॉरवर्ड टू दिस, चलो कंटिन्यू करते हैं।
Progress 2025. Approximately 40-fold increase in solar energy 2014 to 2025.
हम यहाँ पे हैं।
30% increase in wind energy capacity
यहाँ पे है ना।
2020 to 2024. 13-fold increase in ethanol blending in petrol 1.5%. In 2014 to 20% in
हमने इथेनॉल ब्लेंडिंग
2025.
E20 अचीव कर लिया
Top
है।
5 RE states: Rajasthan, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra.
अच्छा, अब एक सेकेंड,
Reason behind growth
अब
in
आपको
renewable.
एक चीज़ और बताता हूँ। E20 की बात कर ही दी है इसने, तो अब E20 भी देखना पड़ेगा, है ना। E20 का स्टेटस था कि 2020 में अचीव हो जाना चाहिए, है ना। E20 ब्लेंडिंग स्टेटस अप्रैल 2026, PIB GOI MOEFCC in 50 words। ठीक है, देखते हैं क्या स्टेटस चल रहा है।
Digpai, latest PIB plus GOI status April 2026, go 50 words make crisp samaj. E20 blending under ethanol blended petrol program targets 20% blending by ESY 2025-26. Around 116 crore liters ethanol required, with vehicles E20 compatible since 2023 and rollout from 2025. Gov roadmap continues till Oct 2026, supporting energy security, emission reduction, and farmer income.
Achieved or not or extended, है ना। ऐसे थोड़ा आपको होना पड़ता है क्यूरियस, तो आपको समझ में आएंगी चीज़ें।
Short answer, UPSC ready clarity. Status, April 2026, almost achieved, effectively achieved, Quirl Square 20%, but formal nationwide completion is still ongoing
अभी
till
चल
Oct
रहा है,
2026.
अक्टूबर
Extended
2026 तक
roadmap.
एक्सटेंड कर दिया है।
Bye. Confusion yahi aata hai. Govt ni E20 target, 20% blending, co ESY 2025-26, tak achieve Karnada. Ground reality, 19 to 19.9% blending already achieved in 2025. Some official statements even say E20 level reached in current cycle. But important twist, complete nationwide rollout stabilization, abhi bhi chal raha hai. Gov roadmap officially extended till 30/2026.
PIB ने बोला
Final
है, ठीक है।
UPSC conclusion. Target 20%, substantially achieved. Full implementation continuing, clash, extended till Oct 2026. One-liner, exam gold, India has nearly achieved E20 blending when 20%,
PIB document
but
है।
full nationwide implementation and roadmap continue till October 2026.
देखो ये क्या लिखा है इसमें, इसमें लिखा है ये, इन द मीन वाइल द करेंट रोड मैप कमिट्स गवर्नमेंट टू E20 अप टू 31/10/2026। तो इन्होंने एक्सटेंड कर दिया, ये PIB के डॉक्यूमेंट में आपको समझ में आ रहा होगा। 31/10/2026 तक के लिए ये हमारा E20 का जो रोड मैप था, अभी हमने कुछ 19.6 के आसपास अचीव कर लिए, लेकिन अभी E20 नहीं हुआ है पूरा। तो वो अपना अक्टूबर 2026 तक का रोड मैप दिया है इन्होंने। मतलब अगर कोई मेंस का एग्ज़ाम देगा, उसका रिजल्ट जब आ रहा होगा तब ये हो चुका होगा। ठीक है, नाउ लेट्स कंटिन्यू।
All sector. High potential. For example, Tropic of Cancer passes through many states, giving 300 plus sunny days annually. High wind energy potential due to long coastline and elevated terrains, etc. Supportive government policies and initiatives. Our national policies for long-term planning. For example, offshore wind energy policy, 2015, national wind solar hybrid policy, 2018, national policy on biofuels, 2018, etc. O development of infrastructure, green energy corridor, GEC, scheme for transmission infrastructure, PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana, providing subsidized rooftop solar panels installation, 10 lakh installations as of March 2025, etc. O regulatory and market reforms. Renewable Purchase Obligation, RPO, mandates that states and utilities must procure a minimum percentage of their electricity from renewable sources. Indian Carbon Market, 2024. A carbon trading platform with carbon credit trading scheme, CCTS, notified under Energy Conservation Act, 2001 to incentivize low-carbon power generation. Greater than. Green Open Access Rules, 2022. Allow large consumers to buy renewable energy from any source nationwide, bypassing local distribution constraints. O dedicated schemes, National Green Hydrogen Mission, NGHM, with target of 5 million metric tons of green hydrogen production annually by 2030. Ethanol blended petrol, EBP, program with target of 20% ethanol blending in petrol by 2025 to 2026. National Solar Mission, NSM, National Bioenergy Program, 2021 to 2026, Waste to Energy Program, etc. O accelerating investment, 100% FDI allowed under automatic route, RE classified as a subcategory, under RBI's priority sector lending, sovereign green bonds, etc. O domestic manufacturing of components, schemes like production-linked incentive, PL1, scheme for high efficiency, solar PV modules, scheme for development of solar parks and ultra-mega solar power projects, promote domestic manufacturing. For example, India's solar module manufacturing capacity jumped from 38 gigawatts to 74 gigawatts during fiscal year 2024 to 25. International collaborations. O. International Solar Alliance, ISA. Launched by India and France at COP21 in 2015. Brings together 100 plus countries to mobilize $1 trillion in solar investments to make clean energy affordable. O One Sun, One World, One Grid, OSOWOG, launched by India at the ISA Assembly in 2018, aims to create a global interconnected solar grid. Challenges in realizing true potential of renewable sector. Financial and investment barriers. O low annual investment. India requires around $10 trillion by 2070 for its clean energy transition. O Discom. Financial distress. Discoms suffer from poor billing efficiency, revenue gaps, tariff delays affecting working capital and debt servicing for RE companies. Infrastructure challenges or intermittency of renewables. For example, solar peaks during the day, but not at evening peak. Demand forcing states to backstop solar with coal. O. Transmission. Bottlenecks. For example, in states like Tamil Nadu with high wind capacity, power often cannot be fully evacuated because the grid network is congested. O. Limited storage capacity. Battery storage cost remains high, approximately 5 to 6 rupees per unit storage cost, making round the clock renewable power costly. O. Land acquisition. Renewable energy projects require large tracts of land, leading to delays, high costs, and conflicts with local communities, as well as food security concerns. For example, solar can need 300 times as much space as nuclear energy. Economic Survey 2023 to 24. Manufacturing constraints. O. Heavy dependence on imports. India imports 80 to 90% of solar cells and modules from China due to limited domestic polysilicon/wafer manufacturing. O. Global supply chain. Disruptions. Production and processing of many critical minerals are geographically concentrated, making global supply vulnerable to several risks. For example, China controls 60% of rare earth production, 60% of critical minerals production, and 80% of the processing worldwide. Other issues. Poor enforcement of RP targets, inconsistent net metering rules, environmental concerns related to extraction of minerals. Way ahead, enhanced Discom reform. Focus on loss reduction, smart metering, tariff rationalization to improve payment discipline. Build domestic manufacturing capacity. India must expand manufacturing of solar modules, wind turbines, batteries, and green hydrogen components through PLI schemes to reduce import dependence. Promote advanced storage technologies. Large-scale storage solutions like ACC batteries, pumped storage hydropower, and hybrid systems must be expanded. Unified renewable energy law. It can ensure clear rules for power purchase agreement enforcement, land acquisition, and grid access to boost investor confidence. Increase financial mobilization. Explore diversified funding sources like green bonds, multilateral financing, blended finance, and private investments. Plan for a just transition in coal-dependent regions through jobs, reskilling, local RE manufacturing.
एक वर्ड और बहुत important है,
Improve
वो
grid
just
infrastructure and
transition.
renewable integration. Modernize transmission corridors and enable smart grid systems through AI/ML technologies. 5.4.
चुप हो जा भाई 1 मिनट के लिए ना. जस्ट ट्रांजिशन भाई साहब, राइट, विद मिक्स स्क्रिप्ट है ना. या मैंने इसको थोड़े बहुत वो दे रखे हैं प्रॉम्प्ट, तो ये करता है. देखो इसे थोड़ा इजी समझ में आती है इस स्क्रिप्ट में, ठीक है, मेरे को तो अच्छा लगता है.
देख भाई, जस्ट ट्रांजिशन का सिंपल मतलब है कि जब हम फॉसिल फ्यूल इकोनॉमी, कोल ऑयल से क्लीन एनर्जी इकोनॉमी की तरफ शिफ्ट करते हैं, तो ये ट्रांजिशन फेयर और इंक्लूसिव होना चाहिए.
फेयर और इंक्लूसिव
मतलब सिर्फ एनवायरनमेंट बचाना ही गोल नहीं है, बल्कि उन वर्कर्स का भी ध्यान रखना है जो कोल माइंस, थर्मल प्लांट्स आदि में काम करते हैं. अगर अचानक शिफ्ट कर दिया तो उनकी जॉब्स चली जाएंगी, सोशल इनइक्वालिटी,
अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट.
इसलिए जस्ट ट्रांजिशन कहता है वर्कर्स को रेस्किल / अपस्किल करो, नए ग्रीन जॉब्स क्रिएट करो ऑफ अफेक्टेड रीजन्स जैसे कोल बेल्ट्स को इकोनॉमिक सपोर्ट. तो सिंपल लाइन, ग्रीन ट्रांजिशन होना चाहिए, पर इंसान को इग्नोर करके नहीं. यूपीएससी ट्रैप, इसे सिर्फ एनवायरमेंटल कॉन्सेप्ट मत समझना, ये सोशल जस्टिस प्लस इकोनॉमिक रिस्ट्रक्चरिंग का कॉम्बो है.
अब देखो ये वाले बहुत सारे लोगों के कंफ्यूजन रहते हैं कि व्हाट इज जस्ट ट्रांजिशन, है ना. जस्ट ट्रांजिशन लगता है कि हाँ बस ट्रांजिशन कर दो ग्रीन इकोनॉमी में, बट जस्ट मीन्स यहाँ पे जस्टिस की बात हो रही है. तो जस्टिस टू वर्कर्स मतलब वर्कर्स फॉर एग्जांपल वर्किंग इन कोल माइंस या थर्मल पावर प्लांट्स, है ना, उनकी जॉब अफेक्ट होगी अगर आप ट्रांजिशन कराओगे, है ना. जॉब अफेक्ट होगी, इसलिए उनको रीस्किल करो या फिर अपस्किल करो. या आपकी जिम्मेदारी है, इंस्टीट्यूशन की जिम्मेदारी है कि उनको अपस्किल करें. सिर्फ ऐसे हटा देने से कुछ नहीं होगा, उनके लिए ग्रीन जॉब्स को क्रिएट करो. अब आप ऐसा नहीं है कि आपने उनको हटा दिया और बोल दिया कि ट्रांजिशन हमने कर लिया ग्रीन में. उनके लिए ग्रीन जॉब्स को क्रिएट करो. जिन लोगों को तुमने बेघर किया है, हटा दिया पावर प्लांट हटने से, वो भी तो ह्यूमन है. और अगर कुछ नहीं कर पा रहे हो तो इकोनॉमिक सपोर्ट दो, उनको इंसेंटिव दो कि ये आपके 5 लाख का खामियाजा आपने भुगता है, आप 5 लाख रखो. इस टाइप से इकोनॉमिक सपोर्ट देना पड़ेगा. तो एक तरीके से ये इट इज़ नॉट जस्ट वन वे और द अदर, इट इज़ सोशल जस्टिस एंड इकोनॉमिक रिस्ट्रक्चरिंग. इट मीन्स इकोनॉमिक सोशल जस्टिस बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. सिर्फ ये एक इन्वायरमेंटल टर्म नहीं है, प्लस इकोनॉमिक रिस्ट्रक्चरिंग. इकोनॉमी भी आपको हेल्प करनी पड़ेगी इकोनॉमिकली, है ना, और सोशली उनको अपलिफ्ट भी करना पड़ेगा. नॉट जस्ट एन एनवायरमेंट टर्म, ये याद रखना. इसका बेसिक मीनिंग ये होता है, ठीक है. तो यहाँ पे क्या बोला है इन्होंने, जस्ट ट्रांजिशन, जैसा कि आप यहाँ देख रहे हो, है ना.
Seed management. Why in the news? The Department of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare has released the Draft Seeds Bill 2025. About Draft Seeds Bill 2025.
Plan for just transition,
Objective.
coal dependent regions.
It will regulate the quality of seeds and planting materials available in the
वही मतलब हो
market.
गया ना.
The proposed legislation seeks to replace the Seeds Act 1966 and Seeds Control Order 1983. Key highlights of the bill: mandatory registration, no seed, except farmer's variety, and the one produced exclusively for export purposes shall be sold unless registered. Mandatory boarding on SATI portal, It is a national portal created by the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare in partnership with National Informatics Center, NIC, to provide complete traceability of the seeds from the point of origin till they reach the farmer. Regulation of the sale of seeds. Seed varieties to conform to the Indian minimum seed certification standards. Seed committees. Central and state seed committees to be constituted by the central government and state governments, respectively. The Central Seed Committee shall offer advice on matters relating to seed programming, planning, seed, development, production, storage, processing, export and imports, etc. Registration. Subcommittees. To recommend kinds or varieties of seeds for registration after scrutinizing their claims. National Register on Seed Varieties. It is a register of all kinds or varieties of seed kept under the control and management of the registrar. Protect farmers' rights. Protect farmers' rights to save, use, exchange, or sell their seeds, like traditional varieties, without needing brand registration, but they can't sell them under a brand name. Establishment of central and state seed testing laboratories, equipped with seed analysts and inspectors. Comparative Analysis of Seeds Act, 1966 and Draft Seeds Bill, 2025. Aspect, Regulatory Scope, Seed Registration. Seeds Act, 1966. Limited to notified varieties, leaving a large part of the seed market unregulated. Registration depended on government notification and wasn't mandatory for every variety. Draft Seeds Bill, 2025, covers all commercially sold seed varieties, creating a uniform regulatory landscape, mandatory registration for every seed variety before trade. Old notified varieties are deemed registered. Quality assurance mechanisms. Farmer rights limited protections. Farmers had null. Basic standards chastity with limited testing structure. For germination and stricter quality marks, digital labeling, QR traceability, and expanded accredited laboratories. Farmers can save, exchange, and sell their seeds. Market responsibility penalty. Technological adaptation. Structured compensation avenue. Weak oversight allowed limited seeds to circulate. Fines were low and outdated. Did not aim to regard hybrids, GM seeds, or biotechnology advancements. Stronger monitoring through enrollment, labeling, and traceability conditions. 3-tier penalty system, trivial, minor, and major, with significantly advanced fines. Regulated seed incorporates biotech norms, imports, and oversight mechanisms for modern technologies. Overview of India's seed sector. Seed exports amount to $150 million within a global export market valued at $15 billion, less than 1%, in 2023. India is the 5th largest seed industry in the world. The USA has the largest industry. 24. The seed program follows the limited generation system for seed multiplication in a phased manner. It recognizes 3 generations, namely breeder, foundation, and certified seeds. 3 generations of seeds. Breeder seed, progeny of the nucleus seed of a variety, and is produced by the originating breeder or by a sponsored breeder. ICAR promotes sponsored breeder seed production program through National Seeds Corporation / State Farms Corporation of India, Krishi Vigyan Kendras, etc. Foundation seed. Progeny of breeder seed. Production of foundation seed has been entrusted to the NSC, SFCY, State Seeds Corporation, State Departments of Agriculture, and private seed producers. Certified seed. It is the progeny of foundation seed. Existing challenges in the seed sector. Low seed replacement rate, SRR. In India, many open-pollinated crops in food grains and oilseeds, the SRR is less than 25 to 30%. Seed market monopoly. Multinational companies, for example Bayer, Monsanto, dominate seed markets, limiting access to local seeds. Seed production constraints. Ensuring adequate and timely seed production to meet the requirements of India's highly diverse cropping system remains a major challenge. Seed availability. Farmers primarily meet their seed requirements through farm-saved seeds, with approximately 65% relying on their own saved seeds or those distributed among them. Poor quality seeds. Inferior quality seeds result in low germination rates and suboptimal crop performance. Other. Inefficient post-harvest seed management, including storage, processing, and distribution, further affects seed quality and availability. Key initiatives taken: submission on seeds and planting materials seeks to ensure the production and multiplication of high-yielding certified/quality seeds. National Seeds Policy, 2002. It emphasizes seed production, quality assurance, and seed distribution and marketing, etc. Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act, 2001. The legislation provides for the establishment of an effective system for the protection of plant varieties, the rights of farmers and plant breeders, and encourages the development of new varieties of plants. Seed Village Program, Beach Gram Yojana, improve farmers' saved seed quality. National Seed Reserve maintains reserves to ensure seed availability during climatic disruptions. Other, National Seeds Project Phase 3, NSP3, Seed Management 2.0 System, etc. Way forward. Promoting biotech innovation for high-yielding, stress-tolerant, and nutrient-rich seed varieties to address climate change and food security concerns. For example, ICAR recently developed 2 genome-edited rice varieties, DRR Rice 100, Kamala, based on Samba Masuri, and Pusa DST Rice 1, based on MTU 1010. Establishing community seed banks. It will help in preserving and promoting local seed varieties. Identify seed hubs. They can produce and supply seeds to farmers in specific areas. Oh, this approach not only minimizes transportation costs, but also helps reduce the overall cost of seed supply for farmers. Increasing SRR. Timely replacement of seeds to progressively increase the SRR, particularly for regionally important varieties. Improve seed quality assurance. Upgrade seed testing laboratories. Promote digital traceability and enforce strict quality standards to ensure high germination and varietal purity. Other, establishing safe storage facilities to ensure post-harvest management of seed, etc. Conclusion. The Draft Seeds Bill 2025 seeks to strengthen India's seed system by improving quality standards, ensuring farmer access to affordable certified seeds, and promoting innovation. By tackling persistent gaps in regulation and seed availability, it can enhance productivity and support a more resilient agricultural sector. 5.5. Vultures. Why in the news? Wildlife Institute of India, WII, releases its first Pan-India assessment and monitoring of endangered species, vultures. Major findings. This first nationwide assessment estimated breeding adult populations focusing on 4 critically endangered species, that is, the white-rumped, Indian, slender-billed, and red-headed vultures. Geographic scope. The survey documented vulture presence at 216 sites across 17 states. Contraction of range.
17 states.
It revealed absence of nesting in nearly 70% of historical sites
White-rumped,
previously
Indian,
known across the country.
red-headed vultures.
Dependence on protected areas.
वो अपनी वो है,
PAs.
देखो
PAs hold 54% of all
ये वाला
documented
ये
nests.
वाला जो एरिया है ना,
Species-specific findings. O. Indian vulture, Gyps indicus, found mainly in Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan,
ये अपना
largest at
critically
Mukondra Hills.
endangered हैं चारों.
Reliant on secure cliff sites, a white-rumped vulture, Gyps bengalensis, concentrated. In Kangra Valley, Himachal Pradesh. O slender-billed vulture, Gyps tenuirostris, breeding mostly in Upper Assam. O red-headed vulture, Sarco Gyps calvus, found in Madhya Pradesh, depends on dense, undisturbed forests. Population extremely low and fragmented. Vultures. Large carrion-eating birds, mainly found in tropics and subtropics, 9 species in India. Significance: clean environment by consuming carcasses, controlling wildlife diseases. Conservation status: protected under Schedule 1, Wildlife Protection Act, 1972. Threats: habitat loss, food scarcity, diclofenac poisoning, electrocution, conservation initiatives, ban on diclofenac, ketoprofen,
Diclofenac की वजह से बहुत मरे
action
थे
plan
बीच
for
में.
vulture conservation, 2020 to 2025.
ठीक है.
5.6 News in Shorts. 5.6.1
थ्रेड इनको मेन तो
India Botswana
इलेक्ट्रोक्यूशन
cheetah
है,
translocation
डाइक्लोफेनाक
fact.
पॉइजनिंग है. ये भाई सुनो,
India Botswana formally announced
अगर-
translocation of 8 cheetahs.
किसी ने इन्वायरमेंट को ढंग से PYQ एनालिसिस किया है ना, तो यू विल रियलाइज कि डाइक्लोफेनाक पे क्वेश्चन आ चुका है. डाइक्लोफेनाक से वल्चर्स की पॉपुलेशन बीच में बहुत कम हो गई थी, तो फिर इनको बचाने के लिए मिशन स्टार्ट किया गया है. है ना. वर्ल्ड वाइल्ड लाइफ इंस्टीट्यूट रिलीजेस फर्स्ट पैन इंडिया असेसमेंट इन मॉनिटरिंग इंडेंजर्ड वल्चर्स. सो अभी वर्ल्ड इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ इंडिया ने रिलीज़ किया है फर्स्ट पैन इंडिया असेसमेंट ऑन मॉनिटरिंग इंडेंजर्ड स्पीसीज ऑफ वल्चर्स. और मैं आपको एक चीज़ और बताता हूँ. देखो जो अपनी ये वाली वल्चर है, बियर्डेड वल्चर है, ये नियर थ्रेटेंड है. जो सिनेरियस वल्चर है ये अपनी नियर थ्रेटेंड है. इजिप्शियन वल्चर इज़ अच्छा एक और वल्चर है हिमालयन ग्रिफिन वल्चर, ये भी नियर थ्रेटेंड है. अब मैं आपको दूसरे टाइप की वल्चर बताता हूँ. एक वल्चर है ये वाली जिसको इजिप्शियन वल्चर कहते हैं. इजिप्शियन वल्चर इज़ इंडेंजर्ड, ठीक है. इजिप्शियन वल्चर इज़ इंडेंजर्ड, ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं. एंड देन यू हैव द लीस्ट कंसर्न वल्चर, जिसको हम अपने जो नॉर्मल जब क्रेमेटरी होता है तो उसके अंदर पर्शियन प्रैक्टिसेस, कल्चरल प्रैक्टिसेस में इस वल्चर का यूज़ किया जाता है, जिसका नाम है ग्रिफिन वल्चर. ये वो सबसे कॉमन है, लीस्ट कंसर्न है. अब मेरी बात सुनो कि इसके अंदर जो अलग से नाम दिख रहे हैं ना आपको, जैसे एक ये नाम हो गया रेड हेडेड वल्चर, है ना, रेड हेडेड, वाइट रम्ड वल्चर, जो स्पेशल से नाम लग रहे हैं, क्रिटिकली इंडेंजर्ड है, स्लेंडर बिल्ड वल्चर, ये और इंडियन वल्चर. एक इंडियन का नाम याद रखना, ये भी क्रिटिकली इंडेंजर्ड है. नहीं तो रेड हेडेड, वाइट रम्ड और स्लेंडर बिल्ड नाम ही अलग से दिख रहा है ना ये तीनों. ये वाले जो वल्चर हैं ये अपने क्रिटिकली इंडेंजर्ड है, बहुत कम मिलते हैं. और इजिप्शियन वल्चर इंडेंजर्ड है. इसके बाद जो सबसे ज़्यादा ये वाला इंडेंजर्ड कैटेगरी में है वो है इजिप्शियन वल्चर. और फिर ये जो है ये एक कैटेगरी और बना देता हूँ. फॉर एग्ज़ाम्पल ये वाली जो कैटेगरी है, ये तीन अपने इंडेंजर्ड नहीं हैं. सॉरी 4 इंडेंजर्ड नहीं हैं. ये वाले जो दिख रहे हैं ना आपको, ये वाले दे आर नॉट इन VEC कैटेगरी, मतलब ना ही ये वल्नरेबल हैं, ना ही ये इंडेंजर्ड हैं, ना ही क्रिटिकली इंडेंजर्ड हैं. ये तीनों नहीं हैं, मीन्स ये तीनों ही इंडेंजर्ड कैटेगरी में नहीं हैं. और अगर इन 5 को कंसिडर करोगे आप, अगर थ्रेटेंड कोई बोलता है ना, थ्रेटेंड कैटेगरी के अंदर पता है क्या क्या आता है? एक आता है वल्नरेबल, इंडेंजर्ड और क्रिटिकली इंडेंजर्ड IUCN रेड लिस्ट में. तो उसमें ये 5 जो वल्चर्स हैं ये वाले, कैसे बनाऊँ, चलो इसका कलर चेंज कर देते हैं. इसका कलर कर देते हैं अपन रेड नहीं, लेट्स से इसका कलर ऑरेंज कर दिया, ठीक है. अब इसमें जो ये 5 वल्चर हैं ये वाले 5 वल्चर, ये अपने थ्रेटेंड कैटेगरी में है. थ्रेटेंड में एक इंडेंजर्ड है, बाकी 4 क्रिटिकली इंडेंजर्ड हैं, ठीक है. जैसे आपको पता होगा IUCN रेड लिस्ट अगर किसी को रिवाइज करनी है, तो IUCN रेड लिस्ट क्या होती है? IUCN रेड लिस्ट होती है, देखो VEC याद रखना है ना, एक्सटिंक्ट इन वाइल्ड याद रखना, एक्सटिंक्ट याद रखना, ये अपनी थ्रेटेंड कैटेगरी है. अब इससे पहले क्या होगा? नियर थ्रेटेंड होगा, है ना. फिर उससे लीस्ट कंसर्न होगा. लीस्ट कंसर्न से पहले क्या होता है? डेटा डेफिशिएंट होता है. और फिर डेटा नॉट अवेलेबल, NA नॉट अवेलेबल. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 बन गई अपनी 6 कैटेगरी. सो सबसे ज़्यादा तो ये वाली कैटेगरी है VEC वाली, इसको हम बोलते हैं थ्रेटेंड कैटेगरी. इट इज़ कॉल्ड थ्रेटेंड कैटेगरी, ठीक है. इट इज़ कॉल्ड थ्रेटेंड कैटेगरी. वल्नरेबल, इंडेंजर्ड, क्रिटिकली इंडेंजर्ड. और ये है नियर थ्रेटेंड, इससे क्योंकि थ्रेटेंड नहीं है, नियर थ्रेटेंड है. लीस्ट कंसर्न, फिर डेटा डेफिशिएंट है, नॉट अवेलेबल. नॉट अवेलेबल मीन्स इसका असेसमेंट ही नहीं हुआ, और इसमें असेसमेंट हुआ है डेटा डेफिशिएंट में, बट डेटा बहुत कम है. लीस्ट कंसर्न का अच्छा खासा असेसमेंट हुआ, लेकिन बहुत अच्छी वैरायटी में अवेलेबल है, तो इसको लीस्ट कंसर्न में रखा. नियर थ्रेटेंड अगर थोड़ा सा ध्यान नहीं दिया तो ये थ्रेटेंड कैटेगरी में चली जाएगी, और ये ऑलरेडी थ्रेटेंड में है. एक्सटिंक्ट इन वाइल्ड मीन्स वाइल्ड में एक्सटेंट हो चुका है, लेकिन कैप्टिविटी और जूस के अंदर ये अभी भी जिंदा है. और एक्सटिंक्ट मीन्स अभी मिलता ही नहीं है अर्थ पे, ठीक है, ये एक बार रिवाइज कर दिए, कोई बात नहीं. चलो, लेट्स कंटिन्यू.
To India as a part of Project Cheetah. About Project Cheetah.
प्रोजेक्ट चीता
About launched. In 2022, Project Cheetah aims to translocate African cheetahs to India. It is the world's first intercontinental translocation initiative. Oh, large wild carnivore. From Namibia were, in 2022, 8 cheetahs translocated to Kuno National Park, followed by 12 cheetahs from South Africa in 2023. Implementing agency, National Tiger Conservation Authority, NTCA. ONTCA is a statutory body under the Ministry of Environment, Forests and Climate Change constituted under Enabling Provisions of Wildlife Protection Act, 1972, as amended in 2006. Cheetah Project Steering Committee, established by NTCA in 2023 to oversee, evaluate and advise on implementation of Project Cheetah. It operates under the umbrella of Project Tiger, renamed as Project Tiger and Elephant from 2023 to 2024. About cheetah, Acinonyx jubatus venaticus. World's fastest mammal and the only large carnivore to be extinct in India, 1952. Unlike other big cats, lions, tigers, leopards and jaguars, cheetahs don't roar. 2 species of cheetahs exists. O. African cheetah, IUCN status vulnerable. O. Asiatic cheetah, IUCN status critically endangered. Found only in the arid regions of eastern Iran and Asia.
अब यहाँ पे भी एक चीज़ बतानी, क्योंकि ये देखो एक करंट अफेयर है, ये बताएगा नहीं इतनी चीज़ें, लेकिन अगर आपने PYQ एनालाइज किया तो चीता डोंट रोर, इसका रीज़न क्या है? यहाँ पे एक ह्यूवाइड बोन करके होती है. ह्यूवाइड बोन जो होती है इनकी बहुत फ्लेक्सिबल होती है, सॉरी, इनकी ह्यूवाइड बोन बहुत रिजिड होती है, रिजिड होती है चीता के अंदर. तो उससे जो आवाज़ होती है ना गले की, वो अच्छे से निकल नहीं पाती है, पर करते हैं पर, ठीक है. लेकिन जो लायन है, टाइगर है, लेपर्ड है, जैगुआर है, इनकी ह्यूवाइड बोन फ्लेक्सिबल होती है. ये PYQ अगर किसी ने एनालाइज किया है ना तो उसमें आ जाएगा. मैं आपको दिखा भी देता हूँ चैट GPT में. ह्यूवाइड बोन in big cats. अब यहाँ पे क्या है कि ये फुली हार्ड बोन है. देखो ऑसिफाइड स्मॉल कैट्स के अंदर ह्यूवाइड बोन इज हार्ड. तो इनएबिलिटी टू रोर, एबिलिटी टू पर कंटिन्यूसली पर कर सकते हैं. कंप्लीटली ऑसिफिकेशन, परिंग इज नॉट रोरिंग. चीता इज नॉट अ रोरिंग कैट. अब ये UPSC ड्राफ्ट देखो अपने आप बता दिया, मैंने कुछ नहीं बोला है इसको. इवन दो इट इज लार्ज, इट्स ह्यूवाइड इज fully ossified, so it cannot roar, only purr or chirp. Roaring in big cats is due to partially ossified flexible hyoid bone, whereas fully ossified hyoid is in small cat allows purring but prevents roaring. मैंने यार सेट कर रखा है इसको कि ऐसे बताओ मेरे को. अभी देखो ट्रैप बता रहा है कि चीता इज नॉट अ रोरिंग कैट, ठीक है, क्योंकि यहाँ पे ह्यूवाइड बोन फुली ऑसिफाइड है, मीन्स हार्ड है, और वहाँ पे पार्टली कार्टिलेज नॉट फुली ऑसिफाइड मीन्स यहाँ पे फ्लेक्सिबल है. स्ट्रेचिंग, वोकल कॉर्ड्स स्ट्रेच हो जाते हैं इनके, और उनके स्ट्रेच नहीं होते जो स्मॉल कैट्स होती हैं, ठीक है. आगे आ जाओ.
And in Africa. 5.6.2 Supreme Court directions for tiger reserves protection.
is vulnerable और एशियाटिक चीता critically endangered. और एशियाटिक चीता हमारे नहीं है, हम अफ्रीकन चीता मंगाए हैं, तो हमारा vulnerable कैटेगरी वाला है, ठीक है. critically endangered ईरान के एरिया में मिलता है, ईरान और मिड जो सेंट्रल एशिया वहाँ मिलता है.
Tiger safari restrictions permitted only on non-forest or degraded forest land in buffer zones. Oh, no safaris in core areas or designated tiger corridors. Oh, night tourism to be banned in core/critical tiger habitats. Prohibited activities, commercial mining, polluting industries, major hydro projects, exotic species introduction, low-flying aircraft or commercial firewood extraction, barred in buffer/fringe areas. Eco-sensitive zones, ESZs. All reserves must notify ESZs as per the 2018 Ministry of Environment's guidelines under the Environment Protection Act, 1986. Tiger Conservation Plans, TCPs. States must prepare/revise TCPs within stipulated timelines. OCOR and buffer areas to be notified within 6 months. Natural disaster status. States to treat HWCs as a natural disaster to ensure rapid relief. O compensation. Uniform ex gratia of 10 lakh rupees for human deaths due to HWCs. O draft HWC mitigation guidelines to be drafted by the National Tiger Conservation Authority, NTCA, within 6 months and to be implemented by all states. About tiger reserves. Definition: legally protected areas under Project Tiger, 1973, for long-term conservation of tigers, comprising O-core areas, critical habitat. Inviolable, no tourism or commercial activity. O buffer areas, sustainable use zone, regulated eco-development, limited tourism. Declaring authority, NTCA, a statutory body under the Wildlife Protection Act, 1972, approves and notifies reserves, states proposed sites.
State करता है
Total reserves, 58 tiger reserves across India.
और notify कौन करता है? NTCA करता है.
SC recalls judgment, striking down ex post facto environmental clearances. The Vanashakti judgment had previously barred the granting of ex post facto environmental clearances, EC. Under Vanashakti judgment, court had struck down a 2017 notification and 2021 office memorandum, OM of Centre, which in effect recognized the grant of ex post facto ECs. Reasoning for recalling the Vanashakti judgment. Legal precedents ignored. CJI observed that the Vanashakti judgment was rendered without taking notice of previous judgments of coordinate benches, thus rendering it per incuriam. For example, D. Swamy versus Karnataka State Pollution Control Board, 2021, held that post facto EC can be granted in exceptional cases in Alembic Pharmaceuticals Limited, 2020, while discouraging post facto EC, had regularized existing post facto ECs with directions to pay monetary penalties. OSC. Economic costs. Adhering to the Vanashakti ruling would lead to the demolition of completed public projects. Also demolishing large structures may cause more pollution, for example debris, reconstruction emissions, etc. About ex post facto environmental clearance. An ex post facto EC essentially allows a project proponent to continue with its project without obtaining an EC prior to project commencement. The Environmental Impact Assessment, EIA notification, 2006, clearly requires prior environmental clearance before a project can start. Previously, in Common Cause versus UOI and others, 2017, Supreme Court held that the concept of ex post facto or retrospective environmental clearance is completely alien to environmental jurisprudence. 5.6.4. Dump Site Remediation Accelerator Program, DRAP, launched. It is a year-long targeted initiative under Swachh Bharat Mission Urban 2.0 to achieve the goals of Lakshya Zero dump sites by September 2026. Swachh Bharat Mission, SBM-U. 2.0 was launched in 2021 to achieve garbage-free status for all cities. It also aims at remediation of all legacy dump sites and converting them into green zones. About DRAP. Objective: prioritize high-impact locations, covering approximately 8.8 crore metric tons of legacy waste. Legacy waste refers to aged municipal solid waste in landfills or dump sites. It is a mix of partially or completely decomposed, biodegradable waste, plastic waste, etc. About 80% of the legacy waste is concentrated in 214 sites across 202 urban local bodies. Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, MOHUA. Eligibility: all states/UTs with ongoing legacy waste projects with priority to sites containing over 45,000 metric tons of legacy wastes. No minimum threshold for eligibility for UTs and northeastern states. Dump sites and its management in India. Status: currently, 1,428 sites are undergoing remediation. 1,048 have been fully remediated. Major emissions of primary concern: leachate, polluted water that emerges at the base of dump site waste. Landfill, gas, mixture of carbon dioxide and methane formed because of anaerobic conditions created in dump sites during waste decomposition. Key technologies for managing dump sites: biocapping, biomining, meaning transforming dump site from A, meaning uses microorganisms to extract materials of wasteland to a natural environment like park. Issues: generates leachate and landfill gases that needs to be managed. Requires maintenance for at least 15 years. Economic interest. Benefits: resolves the issue of leachate and landfill gases. No monitoring required once the complete land is reclaimed. 5.6.5. Global Reporting Initiative. Recently, the Global Reporting Initiative, GR1, launched the Integrity Matters Checklist, a UN-endorsed framework designed to align corporate climate disclosures with the United Nations Net Zero standards. About Global Reporting Initiative, GRI. Established, founded in 1997, ESG disclosure, GRI standards enable organizations to report economic, environmental, and social impacts. Modular structure, GRI standards follow a three-part system comprising universal, sector, and topic standards. 5.6.6. Leadership Group for Industry Transition, LEADYT. It is an international non-profit body that sets the world's most widely used sustainability reporting framework. Union Environment Minister of India addresses Leadership Group for Industry Transition, LEAD-IT, Industry Leaders Roundtable at COP30, Belém, Brazil. About LED-IT. Launched jointly by India and Sweden and supported by the World Economic Forum at the UN Climate Action Summit in 2019.
LED-IT's
Aim. It was the first global high-level initiative aimed to achieve net zero carbon emissions from high-emitting industries by 2050. LED-IT drives just and equitable industry transition by fostering public-private partnerships, mobilizing resources, and supporting knowledge sharing. LED-IT 2.0, 2024 to 2026, was adopted at the annual LEAD-IT Summit at COP28. Members, 18 member countries and 27 companies. 5.6.7, UAE Consensus. Adopted at COP28, 2023. The UAE consensus marked the first ever global stocktake under the Paris Agreement. Energy transition urges nations to transition away from fossil fuels in a just, fair, and balanced way. Renewables and efficiency sets clear goals to triple renewable energy and double energy efficiency by 2030. Climate finance calls for greater adaptation support and financial reforms to help vulnerable nations. Global goal reinforces the collective aim to keep 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach and achieve net zero emissions by 2050. 5.6.8 UNEP's Adaptation Gap Report 2025. Key findings. Finance gap. Developing nations face an adaptation shortfall of $310 to $365 billion per year by the mid-2030s. Current funding. Global adaptation. Finance is only $26 billion, far below needs. Implementation. Lag. Most nations have plans, but execution and quality remain weak. Urgent action. Calls for a major scale-up in finance, innovative tools, and stronger resilience planning. India's scenario. India has advanced its National Adaptation Fund and state action plans, but remains highly vulnerable to heat stress, erratic monsoons, and coastal flooding. 5.6.9 Emission Gap Report 2025. Recently, Emission Gap Report 2025 off target was released by UN Environment Program UNEP.
वो ऑस्ट्रेलिया में होगा.
Key highlights of the report. Even the updated nationally determined contribution pledges under the Paris Agreement could lead to global temperature rise by 2.3 to 2.5 degrees Celsius by this century. This falls short of Paris Agreement's goal of limiting warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius while pursuing efforts to cap it at 1.5 degrees Celsius. GHG's emissions rose 2.3% in 2024, reaching 57.7 gigatons of CO2 equivalent. To align with 1.5 degrees Celsius target, emissions would need to fall by 55% by 2035. Highest absolute increase in total GHG emissions was observed in India and China. However, per capita GHG emission for India remained below the world average. 5.6.10 State of the Cryosphere Report 2025. Released by International Cryosphere Climate Initiative, the report highlights the status and impact of changes in 5 key components of cryosphere: ice sheets, mountain glaciers and snow, polar oceans, sea ice, and permafrost. Key highlights of report: ice sheets. Losses from the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets have quadrupled since the 1990s. Impact. Sea level rise results in widespread loss of infrastructure, agricultural land, homes, and livelihoods in coastal regions. Polar oceans. Rising greenhouse gases are impacting their role as heat/carbon absorbers and drivers of global circulation. Impact. 2 major ocean current systems, Antarctic Overturning Circulation, AOC, and Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, AMOC, have slowed substantially due to freshwater melt. Mountain glaciers and snow. Glacier ice loss is increasing exponentially worldwide, with 273 gigatons lost per year between 2000 and 2023. Impact. Threatens water, food, economic, and political security for billions of people. Sea ice. Sea ice extent and thickness have declined 40 to 60% at both poles since 1979. Impact. Loss of sea ice drives Arctic amplification, threatens ice-dependent species, disrupts weather and ocean currents, and increases sea level rise risks. Permafrost. Over 210,000 square kilometers of permafrost has thawed per decade since current warming began. Impact. Thawing permafrost decreases the global carbon budget and releases vast amounts of ancient organic carbon, 3 times more than currently in the atmosphere. 5.6.11 Global Cooling Watch 2025 report published by the UN Environment Program's UNEP. Cool Coalition details a sustainable cooling pathway aimed at dramatically reducing projected GHG emissions from cooling by 2050. Key concerns raised in the report surge in cooling demand. Under a business as usual, BAU, cooling pathway, the global stock of cooling equipment will more than triple by 2050, from 22 terawatts, TW, in 2022 to 68 terawatts. Policy gaps. Only 54 nations meet full sustainable cooling pathway standards despite broad policy inclusion. Escalating extreme heat. Global population exposed to deadly heat stress could rise from 30% today to between 48% and 76% by the end of the century. IPCC. This gets further amplified by urban heat island effect, heat waves, etc. Proposed sustainable cooling pathway. Passive cooling. Reduce cooling loads through passive design, urban planning, and simple measures like doors on. Refrigerated cabinets to cut costs and emissions. Low energy cooling. Prioritize low energy systems such as fans and evaporative coolers instead of, or alongside, air conditioning to cut energy use and costs. Best energy efficiency. Adopt high-efficiency systems with variable speed compressors and proper maintenance for optimal performance. Rapid HFC phase-down. Select low GWP refrigerants that maintain system efficiency to reduce direct emission. Best energy efficiency. Adopt high-efficiency systems with variable speed compressors and proper maintenance and support sustainable cooling. About Beat the Heat Global Initiative. Joint effort by UNEP's Cool Coalition and Brazil, COP30 Presidency, to turn Global Cooling Watch findings. About Beat the Heat Global Initiative. Into real-world climate action. Objective. Promotes
नहीं बदलेगा एक सेकेंड यार, सॉरी फॉर दिस. ओके, विराज के हमारे पास 3 है.
Objective. Promotes. Objective.
ये वाला करते, थोड़ा सा तेज पड़ेगा.
promotes multi-level governance involving governments, cities, industries, and financial institutions for equitable cooling access. Focus areas: O. Passive and nature-based cooling design, integration. O. Public procurement of efficient, low GWP, global warming potential. Technologies: O. Urban heat planning and inclusive cooling for vulnerable communities. 5.6.12. Climate Change Performance Index, CCP1, 2026. Released, which compares climate recently. CCPI was performance of 63 countries
Global
and the
Cooling
EU,
Watch report
which
UNEP
together account
release
for over
करता है ना?
90% of global GHG emissions. Findings for
UNEP
India. India ranks
Coal
23rd,
Coalition.
going from a high performer to a medium one in this year's CCPY. There is no national coal exit timeline, and
UNEP
new
करता
coal
है
blocks
Global
continue to
Cooling
be
Watch
auctioned.
report, ये याद रखना.
Key demands: time-bound coal, phase down and eventually toward a phase out, and fossil subsidies redirecting decentralized community-owned renewable energy. 5.6.13. Climate Risk Index 2026. German Watch releases Climate Risk Index CR1 2026. It ranks countries based on the human and economic toll of extreme weather events, highlighting the urgency for stronger climate resilience. About Climate Risk Index CR1. Genesis. Introduced in 2006 as an annual global climate impact index. Key findings. O. Between 1995 and 2024, 9,700 extreme weather events caused over 8 lakh deaths and $4.5 trillion in OO. Damages. India ranked 15th in CRI rank 2024 and 9th in CRI rank 1995 to 2024. India faced nearly 430 extreme weather events in 3 decades, causing $170 billion losses and 1.3 billion affected. 5.6.14. State of Food and Agriculture, SOFA. 2025. Report. Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, released the State of Food and Agriculture SOFA. 2025. Report. Key highlights of report: land. Degradation is defined as a long-term decline in the land's ability to deliver essential ecosystem functions and services. O. It is driven by natural causes, soil erosion and salinization, and anthropogenic causes, deforestation, overgrazing, unsustainable cropping and irrigation practices, etc. Impact of land degradation or yield loss. For about 1.7 billion people, crop yields are 10% lower because of human-induced degradation. Asian countries are the most affected, both because of their accumulated degradation debt and their high population densities. O. Productivity loss. Total factor productivity growth, which reflects technological advancement and efficiency. Improvements has declined since the 2000s, particularly in the global south. O. Convergence with food security. Globally, 47 million children under 5 years of age suffer from stunting living. Hotspots where stunting overlaps with significant yield losses. O. Ecosystem. Impact. Degradation affects all agricultural systems, undermining livestock production in rangelands and through forest loss, driven by agricultural expansion. Disrupting climate patterns and biodiversity. Policy options for sustainable land use. Regulatory policies. Land use zoning. Deforestation bans. Soil conservation mandates, etc. Incentive-based policies. Uses voluntary and flexible financial rewards for sustainable practices, such as payments for ecosystem services. Cross-compliance mechanisms. Link government subsidies or government support to adherence to environmental standards. Land degradation neutrality, LDN. Hierarchy of avoid. Greater than reduce, greater than reverse land degradation. 5.6.15. Montreal Protocol. 37th meeting of the parties to the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer, MOP 37, has recently concluded. It highlighted discrepancies in HFCS emissions between reported and measured data, lack of atmospheric monitoring stations in many regions, etc. About Montreal Protocol. Signed. In 1987 Kigali Amendment to Montreal Protocol. Adopted in 2016 to phase down production and consumption of HFCs, non-ODS but potent greenhouse gases. 5.6.16. Minamata Convention. COP6 to the Minamata Convention on Mercury. COP6 in Geneva. Agreed to end the use of dental amalgam by 2034. It was also agreed to step up global efforts to eliminate mercury-added skin lightening products.
Minamata Convention Mercury
properties. O mercury, Hg, is a naturally occurring heavy silvery white transition metal with atomic number 80. It is ductile, malleable, and is able to conduct heat and electricity. It is the only common metal that is liquid at room temperature.
Right. O. important. O. Mercury.
Sources. O natural.
Common
include
metal
volcanic
that
eruptions,
exists at
emissions
room
from
temperature.
the ocean, etc. O anthropogenic.
Liquid की तरह.
Mining, for example, during gold mining. Fossil fuel combustion, metal
Minamata
and cement
Convention
production,
legally binding है. 2013 में
historically
sign हुई
used in
थी.
thermometers, barometers,
India
fluorescent
ने
lighting,
किया है
certain
कि नहीं
batteries,
किया है?
and dental. Amalgams. Toxicity. O mercury emitted into the air eventually settles into water or onto land. Once deposited,
इसमें
certain
नहीं लिखा हुआ
microorganisms
कि इंडिया ने किया
can
है कि
change
नहीं
it
किया
into
है.
methyl
I will
mercury.
confirm it. यार ऐसे
Methyl mercury is a
खुले
highly
रहो,
toxic form
दिमाग
that
को
builds
ओपन
up in
रखो,
fish,
है ना.
shellfish, and animals
मीना
that eat fish
माटा
bioaccumulation. Oh,
is
even very small
India
amounts of
a
mercury
part-
exposure can be highly toxic, affecting the nervous system,
a
kidneys,
part and
skin,
ratified.
eyes, digestive system, and immune system. May 6th, 2017.
देखते
Lake
हैं.
Turkana. Recent studies show that fall in water levels of Lake Turkana due to climate change has led to increased earthquake activity in the region.
इंडिया ने
When
रेटिफाई
a
कर
lake's water
रखा
level
है, इंडिया ने
drops,
साइन
the
भी किया,
reduced
रेटिफाई
weight
भी किया
decreases
है.
pressure on the Earth's
इंटेंशन
crust,
दिखाता है
making
कि
faults
कंट्री
more
एग्री करती है,
prone to movement
रेटिफिकेशन
and
बताता
increasing the
है.
likelihood of earthquakes.
अब देखो, जो अपना ये है रेटिफिकेशन और सिग्नेटरी में क्या अंतर होता है. साइन होता है कि इंटेंशन कि कंट्री एग्री करती है. रेटिफिकेशन रेटिफाई किया मतलब लीगली बाउंड हो गया, अब रूल्स फॉलो करने पड़ेंगे. तो रेटिफाई मतलब अपने पार्लियामेंट में कोई लॉ पास कर देते हैं ना, उससे रिलेटेड उसको अप्लाई करने के लिए अपने टेरिटरी के अंदर, वो होता है रेटिफिकेशन. इंडिया बोथ सिग्नेटरी एंड हैज़ रेटिफाइड मीना माटा कन्वेंशन. एम मर्करी पॉल्यूशन को कंट्रोल करना, माइनिंग प्रोडक्ट एमिशन, नेम्ड आफ्टर मीना माटा ट्रेजेडी दैट हैपेंड इन जापान. अच्छा, मीना माटा, बस ये तो सब लोग नहीं बताते हैं ना. मीना माटा ट्रेजेडी इन जापान, मोस्ट प्रोबेबली जापान ही होगा, नाम ही जापानीज लग रहा है. सो 1931 was officially recognized. मर्करी का एमिशन कुछ हुआ होगा. केमिकल कंपनी सिस्को रिसर्च मिथाइल मर्करी इनटू मीना माटा बे. दिस टॉक्सिक मर्करी accumulated in fish and shellfish entered human body through food chain. मीना माटा डिसीज आ गई थी. सीवियर न्यूरोलॉजिकल सिंड्रोम, कॉज ऑफ मर्करी पॉइजनिंग, लॉस ऑफ कोऑर्डिनेशन, numbness in hands, vision and hearing loss, paralysis. मर्करी से वाटर से फिश से ह्यूमन में आया. दिस इज क्लासिक केस ऑफ बायो मैग्निफिकेशन की वजह से मीना माटा कन्वेंशन. देखो यूपीएससी का कॉन्सेप्ट है ये भी, ठीक है. इम्पैक्ट, थाउजेंड्स ऑफ पीपल वर अफेक्टेड, मैनी डाइड, लॉन्ग लीगल बैटल, कंपनसेशन एंड सो ऑन. व्हाई इंपॉर्टेंट? लेट टू ग्लोबल अवेयरनेस अबाउट मीना माटा कन्वेंशन मर्करी 2013. इंडस्ट्रियल डिजास्टर से रिलेटेड है ये, है ना. एक्यूमुलेशन, बायो मैग्निफिकेशन से रिलेटेड है, और इन्वायरमेंटल एथिक्स से रिलेटेड है. बायो मैग्निफिकेशन, बायो एक्यूमुलेशन ऑब्वियसली आ जाता है. हैवी मेटल पॉल्यूशन एंड एनवायरमेंटल ट्रीटीज, मर्करी पॉइजनिंग, फिश कंजम्पशन, न्यूरोलॉजिकल डिसीज, जापान, ये रिलेटेड है. थोड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग करके पढ़ोगे तो मजा आएगा.
Lake Turkana. Location. It lies mainly in Kenya, with the northern tip extending into Ethiopia.
लेक तुर्काना.
Over 90% of inflow comes from the Omo River.
अब ये देखो
Located
सीधा
in
लेक
Ethiopia.
पूछेगा कहाँ आती है.
The Lake Turkana National Park site was inscribed on the World Heritage List in 1997. It is world's largest permanent desert lake and largest alkaline lake. May 6th, 2018. Volcanic eruptions in news.
90% gun flows
Mount
of
Semeru,
Omo River
Indonesia.
in Ethiopia.
O highest volcano on
With
Java
northern
Island.
tip extending
O part of the
into
Pacific Ring of
Ethiopia.
Fire, a highly
So
seismically
Kenya
active
and
belt.
Ethiopia.
O type stratovolcano. O other recent volcanic eruptions in Indonesia. Mount Lewotobi Laki Laki, Merapi volcano,
Increased
etc.
earthquake activity
Hailey
हुई है
Tobi,
लेक तुर्काना
Ethiopia.
में.
Eruptions sent a massive ash cloud across Red Sea and South Asia, causing a thick ash cloud to reach India, leading to
Largest
diversion of
permanent
several
desert
flights.
lake and largest
6.
alkaline
Social
lake
issues.
कौन सी है? Alkaline lake
6.1.
वो है लेक
Decolonizing
तुर्काना.
the Indian mind. Why in the news? Prime Minister urges 10-year national pledge to shed colonial mindset rooted in British MP Thomas Babington Macaulay's legacy
एक सेकंड,
and
ये
his
आगे
major
बढ़
campaign
ये आगे बढ़
of to
गया.
uproot India from its cultural foundations.
एक सेकंड, ये वाला मिस
Macaulay's
कर दिया
contribution.
मैंने. वॉल्केनिक एरप्शन देखते हैं.
Volcanic eruptions in news. Mount Semeru, Indonesia. O highest volcano on Java Island. O part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, a highly seismically active belt. O type stratovolcano. O other recent volcanic eruptions in
माउंट
Indonesia.
सेमेरू
Mount Lewotobi
इंडोनेशिया
Laki
में
Laki, Merapi
और
volcano,
हाईली
etc.
गुबे इथियोपिया में.
Hailey
यहाँ
Tobi,
पे वॉल्केनिक
Ethiopia.
एरप्शन हुए हैं.
Eruptions sent a massive
और
ash
एक है
cloud across
माउंट
Red Sea and South Asia,
लेवोटोबी लाकी
causing a thick
लाकी,
ash cloud
और ये
to
भी
reach India, leading to diversion of
इंडोनेशियन
several
वो
flights.
4000 आइलैंड जो है ना
6. Social issues.
अपने
6.1.
मले
Decolonizing
आर्टिफिशियल
the
लेगो
Indian
में
mind.
इंडोनेशिया
Why in the
वाले,
news?
उसकी बात हो रही है.
Prime Minister
मैंने
urges
भी
10-year
वोल्केनो,
national pledge to shed
माउंट
colonial
लेवोटोकी,
mindset
लाकी
rooted in
लाकी,
British MP
सेमोरू,
Thomas Babington Macaulay's
क्योंकि यहाँ
legacy
पे जो
and his
एशियाटिक
major
प्लेट है
campaign
वो
of
ऑस्ट्रेलियन
to
प्लेट,
uproot India from its cultural foundations. Macaulay's
तो
contribution
बेसिकली ये
to
पैसिफिक
Indian
प्लेट से मिलती है
administration.
इधर, है ना.
Education policy.
इसलिए यहाँ पे इतना नाटक होता
As
है.
president of the Committee of Public Instruction, Macaulay broke the deadlock between Orientalists, favoring Indian
आगे बढ़
languages,
जाते हैं.
and Anglicists, favoring English education. Oh, his Minute on Education, 1835, established English as the medium of instruction and
Decolonizing
prioritized
the
Western
Indian mind.
literature and science over traditional Indian learning. Oh aimed to create Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in morals, and in intellect as an intermediary class. Oh downward filtration theory. focused on establishing elite English institutions rather than promoting mass.
Indian
Elementary
blood and
education,
colour, English
expecting
in
knowledge to
taste,
filter down
obedience
from the
in
educated
moral.
elite. Legal reforms, appointed first law member of the Governor General's Council, 1834 to 1838, under the Charter Act of 1833. O removed privileges of British settlers who could appeal to Calcutta's Supreme Court. O, as chairman of the First Law Commission, 1835, codified Indian criminal law leading to the Civil Procedure Code 1859, Indian Penal Code 1860, and Criminal Procedure Code 1861. Civil Service, the Macaulay Committee, 1854, introduced merit-based competitive examinations, replacing the patronage system. O emphasized general academic education, preferring university graduates from Oxford or Cambridge. Social reforms, championed press freedom, abolition of slavery, free trade, free movement of people, and women's property rights, key aspects of colonial mindset in India. Instilling inferiority. Macaulay's policy broke India's self-confidence and instilled a sense of inferiority by discarding thousands of years of India's indigenous science, art, philosophy. Language. Use of English in courts and universities is seen as aspirational, sometimes hindering access for non-English speakers. Oh, for example, former CJIDY Chandrachud stated that English language in its legal avatar is not comprehensible to 99.9% of the citizens. Culture. Colonial rule imposed Western cultural elements including Western dress,
लीगल जो लैंग्वेज है ना जो
art
कोर्ट्स
forms,
यूज करते हैं
manners,
वो
and
99.9% लोग नहीं
of-
समझ पाते.
often projecting Indian knowledge systems as inferior. For example, Western dress codes are tied to professionalism, especially in corporate sector. Laws and institutions. Many colonial laws, such as the IPC, Indian Penal Code, forest laws, sedition, etc., and criminal procedures are rooted in establishing control rather than service. Economic system, imported economic models, and emphasis on private capital led to impoverishment of a large section of population. Knowledge systems. Indigenous knowledge systems forgotten due to large emphasis on imported models of research and innovation. O Ayurveda and Siddha were labeled unscientific, while Western medicine accorded the status of official medicine. Impact of colonial mindset on India. Bureaucratic overreach. A pervasive license permit style state, intrusive policing, and a command and control bureaucracy reflect continuity with colonial governance focused on control rather than facilitation, seeking foreign validation in various fields such as in academia, corporate standards, policy design, etc. Colorism. A deep-seated preference for lighter skin tones persists in Indian society, directly linked to colonial-era racial hierarchies that favored fair-skinned Indians for social recognition. Social differences. For example, caste stereotypes were hardened through colonial census as it constructed Indian social identities using categories of convenience. Cultural movements to tackle colonial mindset. Arya Samaj, 1875. Swami Dayanand Saraswati founded this movement with slogan, Back to the Vedas, aimed to purify Hinduism, rejected Western influences. Ramakrishna Mission, established by Swami Vivekananda in 1897. It emphasized the universal spirit of all religions and promote Indian spiritual traditions in the West. Swadeshi movement, 1905 to 1908. It focused rejecting Western goods and cultural consumption, encouraged indigenous textiles, music, art, theatre, etc. Mahatma Gandhi visualized Swadeshi as an important tool for India's economic development. The Bengal School of Art, spearheaded by Abanindranath Tagore, it focused on rejecting Western academic realism, reviving traditional Indian artistic styles, and sought inspiration from Mughal Bahari art. Nationalist historiography. Nationalist historians are scholars who, influenced by nationalism, write history with a focus on national pride, including M.G. Ranade, Radha Kumud Mukherjee, and R. K. Majumdar, etc. Initiatives taken to remove colonial vestiges. Repealing laws. Government has repealed more than 1,500 old and obsolete colonial-era laws. By and replaced IPC, CRPC. Evidence Act with Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, BNS, Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita, BNSS, and Bharatiya Sakshya Adhiniyam, BSA. National Education Policy, NEP, 2020. The NEP 2020 promotes teaching in the mother tongue, Bharatiya languages. Symbolic and nomenclature changes. Rajpath in New Delhi was renamed Katavya Path, Racecourse Road being renamed as Lok Kalyan Marg, 2016, etc. Revival and institutionalization of traditional knowledge. Establishment of the WHO Global Center for Traditional Medicine, GCTM, 2022 in Jamnagar, Gujarat. India is set to co-host the second WHO Global Summit on Traditional Medicine in New Delhi in December 2025 in collaboration with the World Health Organization, WHO. New naval ensign. A new ensign of the Indian Navy was unveiled, which removed the St. George's Cross. Budgetary changes. The railway budget was merged with the annual union budget in 2017. breaking a 92-year-old British-era tradition. Affirming cultural pride. The Biplobi Bharat Gallery was inaugurated at Victoria Memorial Hall in Kolkata, dedicated to showcasing the contribution of revolutionaries in the freedom struggle. Way forward. Following Panch Pran, presented by India's PM. It includes a resolve of developed India, removing any trace of colonial mindset, taking pride in our legacy, India's strength of unity, and fulfilling the duties of citizens with honesty. Cognitive decolonization. Through policy measures such as promoting Indian languages in the national education policy, reviving indigenous knowledge systems, etc. Behavioral and economic shift. Support a shift towards self-reliant innovation, sustainable lifestyles, and community-centered development. For example, promotion of traditional sustainable practices in mission life, cultural revival, revitalization of indigenous festivals and crafts. For example, International Yoga Day. Promoting pluriversal forms of liberatory thinking, creating form of epistemic delinking and epistemic reconstruction, which challenges the dominance of Western knowledge systems by accepting plural thinking, restoring pride and heritage with responsibility, in line with constitutional values, scientific temper and social justice. 6.2. Juvenile justice system in India. Why in the news? The recently released report Juvenile Justice and Children in Conflict with the Law. A study of capacity at the front lines. By the India Justice Report evaluated the functioning of the Indian juvenile justice system 10 years after enactment of Juvenile Justice, Care and Protection of Children. Act 2015. JJ Act 2015. System of Juvenile Justice in India. It is based upon Juvenile Justice JJ Act 2015, replaced JJ Act 2000. It was amended by JJ, Care and Protection of Children, Amendment Act 2021. JJ Act 2015 consolidates and amends law relating to children found to be in conflict with law and children in need of care and protection by catering to their basic needs through proper care, development, and treatment. Or it defines child as a person who has not completed 18 years of age and juvenile as a child below age of 18 years. Or child in conflict with law means a child below 18 years of age who is alleged/found to have committed an offense. Key provisions of JJ Act 2015 Juvenile Justice Board, JJB. It mandates setting up JJBs in every district to deal with cases of children in conflict with law. Monitoring of implementation of Act by National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, national level, and State Commission for Protection of Child Rights, state level. Preliminary assessment into heinous offences. In case of heinous offences alleged to have been committed by a child above 16 years of age, JJB shall conduct a preliminary assessment to assess capacity of the child. Or after preliminary assessment, Children's Court may decide whether the child can be tried as an adult. Child Welfare Committee, CWC, constituted for every district by state government to conduct inquiry for declaring fit persons for care of children in need of protection, direct placement of a child in foster care, etc. Issues in juvenile justice system, inconsistent JJBs. As of 2023 to 2024, there were 707 JJBs across 765 districts. Only 18 states and the UT of Jammu and Kashmir had a JJB in every district. Uneven capacity of JJBs. Of the 470 out of 707 JJBs, 24%, that is 111, over 470, functioned without a full bench, resulting in weaker child-sensitive adjudications, longer case durations, and institutional stays for children. Rising pendency. 55% of juvenile justice cases filed before 362 JJBs remained pending, as of October 31st, 2023, due to resource constraints. Also, the pendency rate varies widely from 83% in Odisha to 35% in Karnataka. Lack of oversight. Oversight of children in custody fails to meet statutory targets. Despite legal mandate for monthly CCY inspections, JJBs conducted only 810 inspections across 14 states and J&K against mandated 1,992. High institutionalization in observation homes. Approximately 83% of total children in custodial facilities were in observation homes, reflecting prolonged pendency of inquiries. Weak access to information. There is no central public repository for juvenile cases such as National Judicial Data Grid for the adult judicial system. Sparse funding. Despite available JJ funds, many states underutilize allocations due to capacity gaps and delayed disbursements, leading to persistent financial management deficits and poor outcomes for children. Important judicial pronouncement related to juvenile justice system. Sheila Bas versus UOI, 1986. Supreme Court directed regular visits by district and sessions judges to ensure that rights of detained juvenile children were not being violated. Sampurna Bahura versus UOI, 2005. Supreme Court directed all states/UTs to establish and ensure functioning of JJBs, Child Welfare Committee, to prevent case backlogs. Way forward to strengthen juvenile justice system. Recommendations of India Justice Report O strengthen JJB capacity with adequate personnel in key positions such as judges, superintendents, probation officers, counselors, and legal aid counsel. O. Leverage technology to enhance efficiency. Deploy digital case management systems and centralized database by linking police, court, CC1 to track children in conflict with law and ensuring their best interests. O. Prioritize training as force multiplier and conduct periodic evaluations. Establish fast-track juvenile courts. To preventing prolonged detention of children awaiting trial. Strict monitoring and accountability mechanisms to prevent rights violations, mistreatment or abuse within juvenile institutions. Juvenile handling. Establishing specialized juvenile justice units within police stations and courts can improve sensitive handling of juvenile cases and ensure that due process is followed. Conclusion. Strengthening India's juvenile justice system requires moving decisively from a compliance-driven approach to a child-centric, rights-based framework that prioritizes rehabilitation over retribution. Bridging capacity gaps in juvenile justice boards, leveraging technology for transparency and case tracking, and institutionalizing regular training and oversight can significantly improve outcomes for children in conflict with the law. 6.3. Curriculum on AI in schools. Why in the news? The Department of School Education and Literacy, DOSE and L, Ministry of Education, will introduce curriculum on artificial intelligence and computational thinking, AI and CT, in all schools from Class 3 from the academic session 2026 to 27 about AI and CT curriculum in schools. This step is aligned with the National Education Policy 2020, NEP 2020, and falls under the broad ambit of the National Curriculum Framework for School Education, NCFSE 2023. Goal: reinforce the concepts of learning, thinking, and teaching, and gradually expand toward the idea of AI for public good. Curriculum development. Central Board of Secondary Education, CBSE, has constituted an expert committee to develop the AI and CT curriculum. Implementation. Teacher training and learning teaching materials on National Initiative for School Heads and Teachers Holistic Advancement, NISHTHA. Platform. What role can AI and CT play in education? Development of computational thinking. It is a problem-solving approach that involves understanding a complex problem and develops possible solutions in a way that computer can execute. Oh, it has 4 key techniques: decomposition, breaking down complex problem; pattern recognition, abstraction, focusing on information; and algorithms, developing step-by-step solution to problem. Important. Foundational skills. Introducing AI at young age helps build critical thinking, logical reasoning, and ethical awareness. Oh, students learn to understand and question technology, developing meta skills that are becoming as crucial as literacy and numeracy in the digital age. Enhancing accessibility and inclusion. AI enables learning systems to adapt to diverse needs, particularly for students with disabilities and special needs. UNICEF's Accessible Digital Textbooks Initiative uses AI to create customizable digital educational tools that accommodate varied learning requirements, ensuring inclusive resources for differently abled students, improving foundational literacy and learning outcomes. For instance, in Brazil, the LITRES program employs AI-powered feedback mechanisms to significantly improve literacy outcomes, cutting across socio-economic barriers. Personalized learning and mentorship. AI allows learning pathways to be tailored to individual strengths and learning speeds, promoting deeper engagement. For example, South Korea's Ministry of Education is developing AI-powered digital textbooks calibrated to student proficiency levels, enabling personalized learning while reducing dependence on private coaching. Future readiness. As automation transforms industries, AI curriculum ensures the next generation is skilled and adaptable to rapidly changing job market. The World Economic Forum predicts that 40% of core skills required in all jobs will change within 5 years. Challenges in implementation of AI and CT in education. The risk of diseducation. There is a fear that AI is systematically taking away the incentive to learn if machines can answer questions instantly, leading to a loss of intergenerational learning. Teacher upskilling. Teaching force of over 1 crore. Educators with a varying degree of experience with technology need reskilling/upskilling. Localization. AI models are often not available in local languages. Basic infrastructure. In India, approximately 9% of schools have only 1 teacher, and many schools lack basic amenities like electricity or computers. Curriculum fluidity and relevance. There are difficulties in designing a static syllabus for rapidly evolving technology. For instance, specific skills like prompt engineering may become obsolete within a few years. Psychological impact. Students may share things with AI chatbots, raising concerns about emotional dependency and privacy. Current initiatives in India. Skilling for AI Readiness SOAR.
ये बात सही है
Initiative by the Ministry of Skill Development and
Psychological
Entrepreneurship.
impact
Initiative
heavy है.
has enabled thousands
यार,
of
लेकिन-
CBSE schools to offer AI as a skill
I
subject.
have a very basic thing here. कि psychological students may share things with AI chatbot raising concerns about emotional dependency. अगर वो तुम्हें सुसाइड करने से बचा लेता है, तुम एकदम डिप्रेस्ड हो, तो मेरे हिसाब से तो बहुत अच्छा इनोवेशन है. लेकिन अगर वो उल्टा काम करे, बोले कि यार जाओ कर लो सुसाइड, उस केस में गड़बड़ हो जाएगी. ठीक है. लेकिन अभी मेरे को लगता है फॉर एग्जांपल चैट जीपीटी और इन सब से कुछ ऐसा बोलो ना कि यार आज मेरा मन बहुत ख़राब है, बता मैं क्या करूं, तो फिर वो तेरे को मोटिवेट करने लगेगा, है ना. जस्ट फॉर अ सेक, क्योंकि चैट जीपीटी खोल ही रखा है. आज मैं डिप्रेस्ड हूँ, हेल्प कर, है ना. इस टाइप से कुछ यहाँ पे लिख. करूँ ऐसा कुछ लिख देते हैं तो देख क्या बोलेगा. भाई सीधे बोल तो कुछ बड़ा बदल करने की ज़रूरत अभी नहीं है. जब माइंड डिप्रेस होता है तब सॉल्यूशन सिंपल और ग्राउंडेड होना चाहिए, फ्लैश ही नहीं. बॉडी को मूव कर, कोल्ड फेस वाटर, नाम जप कर, वन स्मॉल टास्क कंप्लीट कर, है ना. देख बेसिकली ये क्या है कि अच्छे से बताएगा, ऐसा नहीं है कि तुम्हें मारने की कोशिश करेगा. चैट जीपीटी अच्छे से बताता है. चलो कोई बात नहीं, कुछ भी डालोगे ना ये अच्छे से बताता है. चलो कोई बात नहीं, अगर ये नेगेटिव यूज़ हो जाए तो गड़बड़ है.
Starting from class 6 to 12. National Center of Excellence in AI for Education. The Union Budget. 2025 to 26 announced the Center of Excellence in Artificial Intelligence AI, aligned with NEP 2020's vision of integrating technology in education. Integration of AI and digital learning in Skill India Mission, SIM. AI and digital learning programs within the Skill India Mission, SIM, to prepare a future-ready workforce. Skill India Digital Hub, SIDH. Platform. A comprehensive digital platform under MSTE for skill enhancement, offering industry-relevant courses in AI/MLN and digital technologies at various expertise levels, along with job and entrepreneurship opportunities to empower Indian youth. Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, PMKVY 4.0. Launched in 2015 and focuses on short-term training, upskilling, and recognition of prior learning by prioritizing futuristic skills like artificial intelligence (AL), Yuva AI for All. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MeI2I, under the India AI Mission, has launched first of its kind free course aims to empower 1 crore, 10 million citizens with foundational AI skills. Way forward curriculum focus. Education in AI should be treated as a basic universal skill linked to the world around us.
Curriculum focus and so on.
And curriculum must be broad-based,
News in
inclusive.
short पे आ जाओ directly, ठीक है.
News in Shorts, 6.4.1. Second World Summit for Social Development. Second World Summit for Social Development concluded in Doha. Qatar with adoption of Doha Political Declaration of the World Social Summit.
About
Second World
और आगे
Summit
बढ़ जाओ.
for Social Development, convened by United Nations General Assembly through its resolutions 78/261 and 78/318.
ठीक है.
Oh, the first World Summit for Social Development took place in Copenhagen, Denmark in 1995. Aim: to address the gaps and recommit to the Copenhagen Declaration on Social Development and the Programme of Action and its implementation, and give momentum towards the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Major events held on the sidelines of the summit or Global Alliance Against Hunger and Poverty. The first high-level meeting of this alliance, launched under Brazil's G20 presidency in 2024, or Private Sector Forum. Specialized forum co-hosted by the International Organization of Employers, the UN Global Compact, and UNDESA, focused on how companies can support inclusive growth. Key highlights of Doha Political Declaration: renewed commitment to Copenhagen Declaration and Programme of Action. Monitoring role: UN Commission for Social Development, a commission within the United Nations Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, retains the primary responsibility for the follow-up and review of the implementation. 3 pillars. Reaffirmed. It centers social development on the 3 mutually reinforcing pillars. Poverty eradication, full and productive employment and decent work for all, and social inclusion. Financing and architecture. Reaffirms the Addis Ababa Action Agenda and welcomes the severe commitment to renew the global financing for development framework. O. It stresses the urgency of reforming the global financial architecture to ensure fair access to development and climate finance, especially for developing countries facing debt distress. 6.4.2 Generational ban on tobacco.
ये important है
Maldives
कि
became the first
मालदीव्स ने लगाया
country
है।
to generational ban on tobacco.
अबे होता क्या
Impose.
है?
About generational ban. Generational tobacco ban or lifetime tobacco ban refers to a policy that permanently prohibits sale of cigarettes or other tobacco products to anyone born after a specified date, meaning they can never legally purchase tobacco at any age. These other measures used for 6.4.3 Reports in News. Reports International Migration Outlook 2025. World Urbanization Prospects 2025 report. Details released by Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD.
International Migration
Major
Outlook
findings.
report is released by OECD.
In 2023, 225,000 Indian citizens acquired the nationality of an OECD country, released by United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs,
भाग जाते हैं ना।
UNDESA.
For
Major
example,
findings.
IIT NIT वाले भाग जाते हैं
The cities
mostly।
are now home to 45% of the global population,
वो।
approximately 8.2 billion.
और उसके अलावा भी
The number
बहुत
of
लोग हैं
megacities quadrupled
जो
from 8
corporate
in
में
1975 to 33
UN
in
Department of
2025.
Economic and Social
In
Affairs,
megacity
UNDESA।
has population of over 10 million people, greater than Jakarta, Indonesia, is now the world's most populous city, followed by Dhaka, Bangladesh, Tokyo, Japan, and New Delhi.
जाकार्ता
India has
सबसे ज़्यादा
44% population living in towns in India.
population है इंडोनेशिया में,
India, along with 6
फिर
other
ढाका
countries,
में है, फिर
will add more
टोक्यो
than
में है,
500
फिर न्यू
million city
दिल्ली में
residents
है।
between 2025 and 2050. Greater than. 7. Science and technology.
इंडिया में
7.1
44% पॉपुलेशन
National One
टाउन्स
Health
में
Mission.
रहती है,
Why in the news?
और इंडिया along
Government
with
to
6 other
launch
countries will
National One Health
add
Mission,
more than 500 million
NOHM.
cities residents between
About
2025
National One
and
Health
2050।
Mission, a multi-sectorial initiative integrating human, livestock, wildlife, and environmental health to strengthen coordinated surveillance, diagnostics, and outbreak response.
साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी और कर
Vision,
लो।
to build an integrated disease control and pandemic preparedness
एक
system
सेकंड
in
में
India by
ब्रेक
bringing
देना
human,
चाहूँगा यार,
animal,
है ना, हल्का सा ब्रेक देते हैं यहाँ पे, बहुत ज़्यादा हो गया। या तो इसको अगले वीडियो में डाल देंगे, कोई बात नहीं, इतना डालते हैं। चलो अगले वीडियो में मैं साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी और कल्चर और प्लेसेस एंड न्यूज़ डाल दूँगा, ठीक है। अभी के लिए स्टॉप करते हैं।